The logging industry might not seem like an action-packed world of politics and schemes, but you'd be surprised. Where I used to work, there were about 4 different companies all trying to put each other out of business. There was also an adjacent area that bordered on a national park. So yeah, if you looked at it from above, it all looks like forest, but there are a lot of invisible lines to look for. I was part of a regulatory watchdog. All the companies in the area called on us as an independent third party to settle land disputes and accusations of overstepping regulatory boundaries. Basically, we were the checks and balances that made sure that they all played nice. That this particular case landed on my desk was a matter of contention. The last 2 cases that had been dropped in my lap ended up being lengthy and unnecessary legal battles, so my supervisor had been putting off giving me field work for about 2 months. There was some pressure to vacate my seat entirely, and I wasn't eager to make a fool of myself for a 3rd time. So whatever this was, it had to go off without a hitch. I was given a couple of files, satellite images, statements, interviews, and witness testimony. There was this space at the edge of company property that had been cut down and cleared out illegally. Insurance companies had demanded a complete third-party review before they agreed to a payout. There was also an issue with the nearby park services, as damage had been done to protected land, making the rangers suspect that this was either self-inflicted or the work of an organized third party. Now, making arrests or proceeding with a formal criminal investigation is the work of the police, but my job was to give them a neutral and objective perspective, something that they could point to as evidence of suspicion of foul play. An acre or 2 might sound like a lot of land to cover, but when you're dealing with multiple sites of about 15 to 25 acres separately, it quickly falls under the radar. And given how close this land was to the edge of the property, I suspect they hadn't intended to clear it anytime soon, so they must have stumbled upon this by accident. I drove out early Monday morning. I had a meeting with one of the foremen working in the area to corroborate the statements that I had been given, and it all checked out. They hadn't been operating in the area. There were no witnesses who could say what had happened, and no one had investigated it close enough to cause any obstruction. We were good to go. I was put in contact with an assistant foreman named Michael, a very driven man in his early 30s, whose head seemed to have been fused with the mandatory white helmet that they made us wear. He had this handlebar mustache that made me think of cartoonish uncle. I met him by a Signal orange Jeep with the company logo printed in all black. "I'm just here to get you where you need to go," he explained. "I'm not here to intrude." "I'm sure that won't be a problem," I smiled. "You know where we're headed?" "Well, of course, yeah. It's been the talk of the crew for a week now." "How so?" I asked. "You hear things," he explained, "like how no lumber was stolen." "What?" "Yeah," he reiterated. "No lumber's been stolen. Most of it just kinda lay there." That part had been conveniently left out of my prep work. Driving through untrained lands in a Jeep isn't as comfortable as it sounds. Sudden dips and rocks and fallen trees make for a bumpy ride, and if you're not used to it, it's gonna cost you your lunch. I was prepared enough, but I noticed Michael looking over a couple of times. He probably wasn't used to outside passengers, having spent a lot of time in the wild, and to be fair, I didn't really look the part. "I'm not sure what exactly you do," Michael admitted. "Some sort of insurance thing." "Well, that's part of it, yeah, but I'm mostly here to make sure that everybody plays along." "They do," he said. "I mean, it's all the same guys." "What do you mean?" "I mean, there are only so many loggers in one area, you know. You quit one place, you go to another. So you all know each other, even at other logging companies." "Yeah," he said, clutching the wheel as we barreled through a bent sapling, leaves brushing against the windows. I'm just saying, I don't know any guy who's motivated enough to bring in a crew to cut this stuff, which means it's an outside thing. Or something natural, I added. A wildfire, soil degradation. It's not usually that black and white. And no offense, but in my experience, it is. Michael rolled onto a half-finished road. It lined the space between the government-owned park space and the edge of the logging area. It was only meant for industry use, but it was surreal to see. This one line of asphalt in the middle of the towering woods, stretching on for as far as the eye could see. If you were to accidentally get turned around, it would be impossible to tell which way you were going. The forest opened into a clearing on both sides of the road. It looked like a bomb had gone off. The trees were either bent, broken, or cut down. There were definite signs of human intervention with clean-cut stumps. Stepping out of the Jeep, something just felt wrong, like we had entered some kind of dead zone. You could taste the exposed, sugary sap in the air. Normally this space would be ripe with wildlife, but I couldn't hear a thing. No birds, no buzzing. Nothing. Michael took me a bit to the side and waved at a man by the tree line. The man was clearly a park ranger, somewhere in his late 60s. He was short and had a sort of lanky build, but with this sinewy look of someone too tough to quit. Michael introduced me, and the man shook my hand. "Ranger Wilson," he said. "Thought I'd give you a hand, given our circumstance." "You got an idea what's happening here?" I asked. "The area's always been quirky," he explained. "Most of the damage has been done on the park side." "How much damage are we looking at?" Ranger Wilson scratched his chin with his scrawny fingers. "About 1.5 acre on the company side. About 2 on the park side. Most people never come out this way. We were informed by our gracious neighbors." Michael excused himself from the conversation, leaving me with a walkie-talkie to call in when I needed a ride back. With Michael out of the picture, Wilson relaxed his shoulders as he took lead. "A place used to be teeming with folks back in the 70s, he explained as we walked. "Called it Slumberjack Woods. Strange name. Well, they mostly went out here to get high and skinny dip in the river. There was this glade nearby that had an amazing view. Perfect for hippy dippies and drum circles." "You don't sound too happy about it." "I'm just sad to see the good times pass us by." He gave me a knowing grin with a silent explanation. I could sense who he might have been in the equation of unruly 70s teenagers. The damage done to the area was significant, but not as clear-cut as first believed. There were some trees that had been cut down with a chainsaw and others with an axe. Not all of them, though. Some were brought down by wildlife. Ranger Wilson pointed out a couple of fallen trees with fresh marks from bears. There were also signs of beavers. "Ain't a lot of beavers this far west of the river," he explained. "For them to go out of their way like this, it's strange." "You know what's happened to all the bushes and branches?" I asked. "What do you mean?" I bent down, adjusting my shoes. I pointed at one of the fallen trees, showing the damage done to the lower edges of the trunk. Branches had been broken off and removed. "You can see this on a couple of the trees," I said, "and some of the saplings are missing entirely." "I'll be damned. Good eye." According to satellite imagery, most of the damage had been done in a sort of oval shape, with the majority being on the park side. I showed it to Wilson and asked if we could check out the center. There had to be a specific point where whoever did this started, and maybe that could give us an idea of how long it had been going on. Traversing this kind of environment takes a toll, though. Fallen trees and branches and rocks. You gotta make sure you don't slip, or you're gonna dislocate an ankle quicker than a flash flood. Not to mention you might be dangling your toes into a viper's nest. Tough boots or not. You don't want to tempt fate more than necessary. So why Slumberjack Woods? I asked. I don't get the name. Well, when you've had a bit to smoke, you usually doze off. It's not that complicated, son. That's all? Well, a couple of folks claimed it was the best sleep of their lives. He continued. Some would come here before a big test or a job interview just to relax for a bit. Used to camp out for a day or so, listening to music and sitting by the river. I guess some places just kind of stick with you. I guess they do. We ended up by the river, following it northwest. We were somewhere around the center, but with things looking so different from what Wilson was used to, it was difficult to find any meaningful landmarks. We ended up walking straight across the clearing without seeing anything but fallen trees. Sometime after lunch, Wilson found a comfortable spot in the shade and had a sandwich. As he finished it, he leaned back and covered his face with his hat. Give me 10 minutes. Don't stray too far. I'm gonna go check that hill for a bit, I said. Southwest. All right, he sighed. 10 minutes and then I'll join ya. And with that, he was out like a light. What a gift. I took a short walk. There was a hill not too far from the river which gave me a great overview. It was strange seeing so much empty space in the middle of such a lively area of the woods. I didn't know what to make of this. It felt like an industrial level operation, but the signs showed a variety of tools and causes. There was no immediate answer, and that was unusual for my line of work. I remember spotting a couple of chickadees among the fallen trees, picking branches and leaves for their nest. The first signs of life that I had seen out there. As they noticed me watching, they took off westward. There was something there in the distance. I couldn't make out the details, but it was in a sort of dip between two hills. You couldn't see it from a low position, making it practically invisible unless you were at the right angle. Peculiar. I went to investigate. I could still see the hill where I had been standing, so I could call for Wilson if necessary. But I made my way down, noticing a path. It was the first sign of movement or organized effort that I had seen. A clear path with drag marks. I rounded the edge of one of the hills and wiped some sweat off my forehead. Minnesota summers are no joke, and I had the sunscreen to prove it. I stopped dead in my tracks. The path kept dipping into a sort of crater. It was about 30 feet across and 20 or so feet deep. The entire thing was covered in fallen trees, branches, bushes, leaves, twigs, saplings, and roots. Pretty much whatever you could break off and carry, all pushed into a single massive pile. It was deceptively large. Even at this depth, the pile was tall enough to rival these surrounding hills. It would only take a couple more feet for it to be visible from all directions. I just kind of marveled at it. The effort it would take to bring this together was enormous. I looked up, only to see Wilson standing on top of the westward hill. He was holding a small hand axe and dragging along a couple of branches. With little fanfare, he dropped it onto the gargantuan pile, causing a ripple of movement among the branches. A couple of chickadees took flight, and looking a bit closer, I saw a falcon, a raptor nesting alongside a prey animal. "Wilson," I called out. "What are you doing?" "Huh?" He looked down at me, clutching his hand axe. "What do you mean?" he asked. "What's with the branches? What's with this?" I gestured towards the pile. Wilson turned to it, scratching his head. "Jesus," he muttered. "What the hell happened here?" We took some pictures and investigated it. At first, it looked just like a disorganized pile, but there was some sense to it. Most of the trees that had been dragged there lined the bottom and the edge, while most of the larger branches were on the inside. It was structurally sound. The outside was mostly covered in leaves and bird nests. I confirmed that yes, I could see falcons alongside chickadees and cardinals. There were also signs of raccoons, and I spotted a couple of curious eyes peering out at me, possibly foxes. Ranger Wilson pointed out deer droppings nearby too. All in all, this didn't make any sense to me. Animals didn't congregate into piles, especially not a man-made one, which put a couple of things into consideration. One, that this was not a natural process. Two, that this wasn't man-made. All the while, I couldn't get a straight answer from Wilson about his contribution to the pile. He shrugged it off and was noticeably quieter from that point forward. That was one of the most curious things about the pile, just how quiet it was. This was a massive collection of trees and bushes teeming with life, but it was as silent as a grave. No chirps or songs, no buzzing insects. I could see ants and bees crawling next to one another, carrying the occasional leaf or pine needle. I could see mice scurrying around, carrying twigs with their teeth. I walked up to the pile to look a little bit closer. There were holes for larger mammals to crawl through, giving it the appearance of a nest or a mound, rather than just a pile of debris. There were things living in there, no doubt. There were other stories about this place back in the day. Wilson called out from atop the hill. There was this bonfire. What about it? I asked as I peered into the nest. A lot of folks came by to build a bonfire. It was supposed to be this amazing thing to burn at the end of the summer. A lot of folks came around to pile stuff on. It wouldn't happen to be this pile right here, would it? Not sure, he admitted. The area looks different now that it's all, dead. But yeah, they never burned the thing. I guess they were happy enough just building it. I looked a little closer, seeing a couple of eyes reflect at me from the depth of the pile. It doesn't look all that dead to me, I muttered. Doesn't look dead at all. Wilson explained as he escorted me back to the road. The bonfire had been this idea by some of the regulars. They would come back every now and then, have a smoke, and then go chopping up something to add to the pile. Hence the jack part in Slumberjack Woods. It was just something to clear your mind, he said. Like meditation, you know. So you're saying that they've been clearing this area since the 70s? Oh, hell no, he laughed. I'm saying that that's what they did back then. People have moved on. Haven't seen anybody around these parts for years. So what are you suggesting? I asked. What's happened here? He scratched his head and looked back, shaking his head. I don't have a God's honest clue, truth be told. I called Michael and waved goodbye to Wilson for now. Wilson yawned and lumbered back into the woods, following an old trail. I didn't have to wait long for Michael to pick me up with his Jeep, asking me what I had learned as we drove off. I told him about the pile. Yeah, we'll get somebody to clear that out. Shouldn't be too much trouble. You got any idea what it is? I asked. Looks like a lot of work. I've checked with the guys who found it. A guy used to go up there to take a nap during his lunch hour. He didn't have a very good explanation. What did he say? Not much, Michael sighed. He just sort of found it. Went up there for a nap, got a bit confused, and ended up in the clearing. That happened a lot with your crew, I asked. Do they get confused much? Well, can't say they do. He pointed in the rearview mirror. The clearing could still be seen in the distance. But around that part of the woods, I guess they do. I spent most of that evening collecting my thoughts and findings. I summarized the various conclusions that I could draw, but ended up with an empty line under conclusion. That was the one part I couldn't figure out. I sent what I had to my superior, knowing full and well that I would get a stern talking to about not having an answer. Inconclusive reports had been my downfall for the past 2 cases, and this wasn't looking to fare any better. The next day, I wasn't just meeting up with Michael. I was meeting up with about 10 of his guys, all in various vehicles. And at the forefront of it all was an excavator, with that same signal orange color in the company logo. Michael was excited to get this done and over with. I got in his Jeep as the little convoy rolled out. "They're probably not going to want to push this issue," he said. "They don't really care about that lumber as long as no one else has been making a profit." "Well, there's no sign of that," I said. "But something's up, that's for sure." It was unreal seeing those machines roll into the clearing, bumping over fallen trees and dry stumps. A couple of people had gotten out of their Jeeps to guide it through, waving and directing it with hand signals. In getting closer to the pile, I noticed a silhouette on the hill. I looked up to see Wilson standing by a fallen tree, chucking branches onto the pile. I excused myself from Michael and I got out. It took me a while to navigate the brambles, but I made it all the way atop the hill. As the crew rounded the corner and oohed and awed about the pile, Wilson was just standing there casually throwing branches. His eyes were closed. I observed him closely. He moved slowly but with the same confidence as always. He leaned down, broke off a branch from a tree and threw it down the hill. I could see a couple chickadees rock back and forth as the branch landed next to their nest, but they didn't take flight. They didn't have a care in the world. I tapped Wilson on the shoulder and watched his eyes open. He groaned a little and looked down at his hands, covered in tree sap and scratches. "You all right?" I asked. "Must have nodded off," he said. "What day is it?" I wanted to tell him that that's something that he ought to know, but there was a tone to his voice that didn't lend itself to sarcasm. I shook off the thought and gave him a pat on the back. "You need me to call someone? You good?" "I'm good," he insisted. "I'm good." And then he saw the excavator. He looked up at me and then down at Michael and his crew. And then he was off like somebody had fired a racing pistol. Wilson hurried down the hill to meet with Michael and his crew. They almost came to blows immediately. I thought the two of them knew each other pretty well, but that didn't seem to be the case. Michael argued that the pile was on company property, while Wilson argued that it could be the home to endangered species, and that we couldn't do anything to it before we had a clear idea of what it was. But while they argued, the excavator crept closer. There was a sort of electricity in the air, a spark. Something didn't feel right, and I could watch the hair on my arm stand at attention, like I had dragged my feet across a rubber carpet. Michael grabbed his walkie-talkie and gave the operator the go-ahead. Wilson knocked the walkie out of his hands, and the two escalated from words to finger-pointing and getting in each other's faces. Meanwhile, I listened to the walkie-talkie. "Coming up on the side now," the operator said. "Looks like a beaver dam from hell." I could hear the whine of the machine as it lifted the arm up high, ready to be brought down. "You hear that?" the operator said. "There's something, I don't know." I tried to call Michael over, but he was too busy berating Wilson, who in turn was busy berating him back. The crew was looking worried, and the operator was sounding more worried still. The excavator's arm hung still in the air. "There's something in here," he continued. "Not like in there, but..." The operator flung his arm about as if waving away an insect, and then he did it again, and then he moved around the cabin. "God, there's something on the floor, there's something on." The other crew members hurried his way as Michael looked up, asking Wilson to shut up. And then a scream. one that we didn't need a walkie-talkie to hear. We all rushed forward. I saw one guy trip over something clutching his leg. Another waved off a couple of bees. Somebody got to the excavator and pulled the door open, only for a handful of snakes to spill out. The operator was unconscious, his face stung red with bees, some of which still crawled over him. His rescuers dropped him, shocked by the hissing vipers in the cabin. Rattlesnakes, it sounded like. I stopped. The guy who had tripped started screaming about a bite, and another physically had to kick off a rodent trying to crawl up his leg. I could see things moving in the dirt, spiders and ants side by side, heading the way of the excavator like an insectoid parade. And for the first time since I got there, I could hear life. Bird song, screeching falcons. And looking up, I could see them, circling the nest together like a cohesive flock, like a perfect circling halo of wings and beaks, all of them just waiting for someone to step out of line, to get a little too close. I helped in whatever way I could, and Wilson did too. 3 guys had rattlesnake bites, and the excavator operator got at least 30 or so bee stings on top of that. We had to call for an airlift to a hospital. For the rest of the afternoon, that was all that we'd do, cleaning up the aftermath of what had turned into a royal mess-up. Michael was stuck talking to his boss, and a couple of people came out to see the pile with their own eyes. They discussed how to best get rid of it, but it wasn't going to happen anytime soon. They were too afraid to even get close enough to move the excavator. By late afternoon, I ended up sitting next to Michael on a stump. The crew had cleared out, but I wanted a statement for my report. I got one, but after the bureaucratic minutia passed, I was left with a man that was worried for the safety of his people. "Never had a snake bite before," he said. "The occasional bee sting, sure, but this is messed up." "Logging is a dangerous business," I agreed. "But yeah, this is new." "I'll be honest," he continued. "We've had some trouble. Some guys wandering off their position. Someone twisting their ankle while on a walk to God knows where. It didn't say anything about that in my file." "Well, 'cause it makes us liable," he explained. "So we shut up about it. But that thing over there, that's the core of it. All of it." "You had any sleepwalkers?" I asked, like more than usual. Apparently, it wasn't as unusual as I would have been led to believe. Michael explained off the record that it had happened a couple of times a week over the past few months. Some equipment would go missing too. Mostly hand axes meant to clear out branches so that you can reach with your chainsaw. Some folks had been found wandering the outskirts of the clearing. It wasn't until the foreman heard about it that we decided to deal with it, he continued, and here we are, dealing with it. Now, I could have gone back with Michael and the others, but this was turning into something that I couldn't ignore. I was under enormous pressure to see this through and come to a satisfying conclusion, and I couldn't do that from behind a desk. I had to see this thing. I had to observe it with my own eyes and figure it out. I had a field kit with a small tent, a sleeping bag, and some basic necessities. I asked Michael to pick me up in the morning. He wasn't happy about it, but he figured I knew what I was doing. I think he might have had more faith in me than I did. There was no telling what was going to happen once the sun went down, but I intended to find out. And so I stuck around watching from a distance. The excavator just stood there, its signal orange arm still hanging in the air. A couple of birds had covered its joints in twigs and leaves, slowly transforming it into a makeshift metal tree. At some point, I must have nodded off. I think I was on top of that hill just like Wilson. There isn't much to say about what happened at the time. I remember my eyes feeling heavy and my mouth being wide open. There was this weight to me, like I was sleeping under 2 feet of snow. At some point, I forced my eyes open, as if trying to escape a nightmare. The sun was just about to set. Long golden shadows stretched out over the clearing, giving it the look of a quiet fire. I could see deer carefully dragging branches through the dirt, slowly moving past the excavator. Families of squirrels and rabbits rushed past my feet, pulling whatever they could along. And I was just standing there in front of the pile, holding a hand axe. My arms ached. And then I dipped into the dark again. And despite my eyes being closed, it was easier to move. It's like something shared its vision with me, and giving me a sensation of where to move and how. I remember something stinging my hand. Perhaps I cut myself on something sharp. And yet my eyes stayed closed and my body limber. It wasn't so much a dream as it was an out-of-body experience. When I got too sore to continue, I crawled. I thought about the comfort of my tent, the warm sleeping bag nestled under my neck, the breathing fabric swaying in the wind, coloring my world a mild tint of cyan. But when I opened my eyes, that's not where I was. I was in the middle of the nest, resting on a pile of moss. The inside was lined with grass, leaves, and wildflowers. I specifically remember my half-open eyes looking into the dark center of a blue sunflower. My head leaned against something warm and leathery. I ran a hand over it. It felt like caressing a warm tire, segmented into armor-like plates. There was this sickly sweet smell coming from it, like burnt sugar. Looking down, I thought that I saw fingers sticking out of the mud. They had a similar shape, but they were arranged in a line, like the legs of a centipede. I dreamt of wandering the woods, feeling the ground shift underneath my feet, desperately looking for a safe haven, somewhere that I could call home. I found this one spot surrounded by a circle of wildflowers, and I was so relieved. Someone had built me a home. In that dream, I remember promising myself to never leave. No matter how old or how large I got, that was my home, my safe harbor away from the storm. And I would ask all of my friends to make my house bigger, stronger, and safer. By the time that I opened my eyes for real, I was curled up inside the middle of the nest. A moss was soft under my face. The early morning summer rays tried their best to creep through the labyrinth of brambles, managing to touch me across the cheek. I looked down at my hand where there were 2 small bite marks. It didn't hurt, it didn't even itch. It was just there. I could barely make sense of it. There was no clear point where I could have crawled inside, and I had no memory of doing so. It's like I had closed my eyes and now I was there. Moving out in 20 minutes. The sound startled me. Turns out that I still had Michael's walkie-talkie. I kept hearing updates on the walkie-talkie and a handful of people responding to one another. Something was happening and they were on the move. It didn't take long before I could hear them, and not longer still before I saw them. No excavators or bulldozers this time, just jeeps and people. I picked up the walkie-talkie and I pressed it. There was no response. My voice wasn't coming through. There were at least 5 jeeps, maybe 6, all full of men with white helmets. They were coming back to finish what they had started. I had to try and get them to turn back until we figured this out. But for that, I had to make my way out of the nest, and there was no way. I was completely closed off. Michael's voice came through in the distance. He didn't need a walkie-talkie for this. "We all have our reservations," he said, "but this thing is a safety hazard. This is a measure to deal with that hazard. That's all there's to it." They had signal orange jerry cans with the company logo, but more so they carried bottles and metal cans, homemade fire bombs, and from their holsters I could tell a couple of them were armed. An icy panic shot through my chest. Didn't they see that I was in here? I mean, how could they miss me? I tried calling out to them, but there was no response. I twisted and turned, kicking at the inside of the nest, but I couldn't find my way out. The branches and twigs were packed so tight they could keep me warm through the winter if need be. I saw the first flame light up and my voice went from a passionate plea to an animalistic screeching. There was a struggle among the crew as two of them stepped back, while the others lit up their fire bombs. One by one, the flames took hold. The homemade explosives weren't as much fire bombs as they were fire starters, but the dry leaves and branches offered little resistance. I remember watching this one wildfire catch fire mere inches from my feet. A curious blue turned to charcoal black, and as I felt the heat across my skin, I knew this was no longer a dream. I twisted and turned, I thrashed, screamed, and cut myself bloody trying to get out. The smoke seeped into the gums of my teeth as I cried for help. In the branches, I could see the many creatures that had made it their home. Unlike me, though, they didn't protest. Maybe they realized it was already too late. They just sat there watching the fire spread. They wouldn't scream as the fire reached their fur and feathers, like captains going down with their ship. The smell of burnt fur choked me more than the smoke ever did. More fire from different directions. The crew was spreading out, making sure to get at every angle. Despite my struggle, I had only managed to move a few inches. I couldn't dig and I couldn't push anything out of the way. I was stuck and the flames were getting closer. The heat stuck to the smoke, tainting the sweat pouring out of my forehead. I was gonna burn alive in that hole and they were never going to know. And no matter how much I screamed or cried or begged, they couldn't or wouldn't hear me. And then the fire reached my legs. That first burn seeped through my shoes. At that moment, the sting on my hand shot through my nerves. Something cold. My eyes were wide open, but I had the sensation of opening them again, like there was a second layer to my vision. And all of a sudden, I wasn't inside that nest anymore. I was on the outside, right next to the crew, being held back by two of Michael's guys. "Calm down," one of them demanded. "What's wrong with you?" They held an arm each, having wrestled me to the ground. "The fire! You were killing me! You're killing me!" "Hey, we're almost done," the other man said. "You need to calm down." One of them looked up. He slowly let go of my arm, and seconds later, the other one did too. I looked up, seeing the crew spread out across the hills surrounding the pile, their silhouettes outlined by the fire starters in their hands. Something was coming out of the nest. The closest thing that I can describe it to is a centipede, but you must understand, this thing was the size of a tiger. A massive white thing segmented with arm-long antennae at the front and rear. It moved slowly, each twitch of a leg calculated and deliberate. It had black patches on its chin where the fire had licked it, and even now it could move at breakneck speed if need be. The crew murmured. A couple took pictures. Michael moved up to it with a pump-action shotgun as the others yelled at him to be careful. Part of me wanted to rush at him and tackle him to the ground. If I blinked hard enough, I could feel myself in the place of that creature. I could feel myself crawling in its place and in the dirt. Things got quiet as Michael raised his shotgun at it. My body rumbled as I felt the creature's trachea tremble. It wanted to be left alone. It was furious and terrified. And then a gunshot, but not from a shotgun. I don't think anyone had noticed Wilson walking up to us, pistol raised. He pointed it at Michael and spoke. As he did, something twitched in my arm. It was as if it knew the words before Wilson had said them, like I felt them. "I want to go," Wilson said. "I just want to go away." I mouthed the words along with him and noticed again how Wilson's eyes were closed, just like when he had thrown branches onto the pile. "Wilson," Michael called back, "what do you think you're doing?" "Let me go," Wilson and I muttered. "Let me go away." "Well then go," Michael yelled back, turning his attention to the creature again. The centipede moved as Michael raised his shotgun. Wilson raised his pistol, and as Michael took a shot, all hell broke loose. The shotgun went wild as a bullet grazed Michael's arm. Someone returned fire. Wilson kept shooting, seemingly at random. I think someone got him in the leg. Michael took another shot at the centipede, but it slithered away, rushing for the woods. A couple more shots rang out. Maybe a couple of them hit, but nothing decisive. The thing just kept going, and in the dark of the woods, even a startling white color can disappear. I stayed on the ground writhing. I was scared, uncomfortable, cold, and at the same time sweating. "Let me go," I muttered. "I'll go somewhere else." I knew Wilson said it too. I know the remaining birds said it. It was sung and whispered and chittered in every living thing, in 1,000 different ways. And it would be said over and over and over, as they all waited patiently to burn. By morning, the nest was a smoldering heap. Michael had only been grazed by the bullet, but one of his crewmen drove him to the hospital. Wilson had taken a shot to his left leg, but couldn't recall why or by whom. In the end, they all decided to just keep things quiet. An illegal burning and an illegal gunfight sort of canceled each other out. My job was made very simple as the claim was canceled. Nothing more to investigate. My superiors weren't exactly pleased, but at least it was cleanly resolved, and I hadn't made things worse. They didn't involve the insurance companies, and there were no accusations leveled against the surrounding logging companies. No suspicion of foul play. On paper, there was nothing out there but unfortunate natural circumstances. A couple of years have passed since. While the strange wound on my hand has healed, I still feel a little twitch every now and then, especially when I'm out in the woods. I might pick up the occasional stick without noticing or turning my head without knowing why. Ranger Wilson has since retired from his position, and I suspect this incident might have been the thing to push him over the edge. Looking back at it all, I know something is still out there. Whenever I close my eyes hard enough, I can still hear it asking all its friends for help. It's building a house, a bigger one with more friends. Perhaps next time no one will notice it. Until they do. Today's episode is sponsored by Quince. A thoughtfully built wardrobe really comes down to a few pieces that actually last. Things that mix well, feel good, and don't fall apart after a season. That's exactly why I like Quince. Quince makes everyday essentials with real quality behind them. I'm talking lightweight cashmere sweaters, short-sleeve Mongolian cashmere polos, linen shorts and pants, and tees made from 100% Pima cotton and European jersey linen. These are the kinds of versatile pieces that make your wardrobe work year-round without overthinking it. What makes Quince different is they work directly with top factories and they cut out the middlemen, so you're not paying for brand markups or expensive retail stores, just high-quality clothing at a fair price. Their cashmere is 100% Mongolian, the same material that luxury brands use. The Pima cotton stays soft and it resists pilling, and the European jersey linen is breathable and lightweight, built for everyday wear while still looking sharp. That cashmere polo, I wear it way more than I expected. It looks great, feels premium, and honestly didn't cost nearly as much as I thought it would. Stop overcomplicating your wardrobe. You don't need more clothes, just better ones. Right now, go to quince.com/MrCreeps for free shipping and 365-day returns. That's a full year to build your wardrobe and love it. And you will. Now available in Canada too. Don't keep settling for clothes that don't last. Go to quince.com/MrCreeps for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/MrCreeps. Can you sign for this? The impatient UPS driver said after handing me a small box. I'm not expecting anything. Who's it from? They shrugged. I just deliver a man. Maybe somebody out there wanted to surprise you with a gift. I signed and they headed to their next stop. I looked down at the box in my hands. There wasn't a return address. Despite its size, the package was heavy. Inside, I found 3 things. A plain brass urn, an old hand-drawn map, and a small note written in my grandpa's handwriting. This was odd for several reasons, most notably because I'd heard my grandpa had died 6 months earlier. We weren't close. In my defense, he wasn't close to anyone. He successfully drove off 2 wives, 3 kids, and 6 grandkids. Shed all of us as easily as a squirrel climbing a tree. He was the kind of man who would buy a cake for a party, only to serve himself a slice and throw the rest away. Money allowed him to pursue his more eccentric hobbies, hunting local legends, searching for rare artifacts, and chasing legacy. Often those 3 things came together in a layer cake of poor decisions. Before he died, he had gotten embroiled in a real estate purchase that had anchored an entire small town. And Grandpa had that effect on people. For some reason, I had been sent these things. My relationship with Grandpa was walk-in freezer chilly at best, and yet he had sent me his earthly remains. I shook the urn, and the ashes switched back and forth. The map was hand-drawn and had yellowed with age. It was a map of his most recent purchase, but this was older than that. He had his eye on that tract of land for quite a while. Weeks after finally buying it, he was a corpse. C'est la vie. There were 3 labeled things, each more ominous sounding than the last. First was the home that he had purchased in the woods. He called it Birch Tree Manor. And with his taste, I envisioned an overbuilt, ostentatious mansion. The second was a body of water near the path lovingly titled the Nightmare Pool. Lastly, there was a stilted house with the words, The Moving Hut, written under it. With panoramic views of the Nightmare Pool, I do imagine that it was valuable. I put the map aside and pulled up the letter. This had been written more recently because the words were shakier than the map labels. I didn't know why he had wanted this land so badly, but he had sacrificed everything in his life to get it. It read, "Dear grandson, we've never had any familial bond outside the blood coursing through your veins and a shared surname. I won't bother you with saccharine musings. We're both too old and jaded for such a claptrap. I approach you as a man with a proposition, a business deal as it were. You may choose to deny this, as is your wont, but denying it might have ill consequences for you. Deadly consequences even. Cool, I mumbled. He continued. I recently purchased a large tract of valuable land. The purchase was not well received by the locals. I did not purchase this land to become a member of their community of inbred goons. I bought the land to pursue a goal that I've had for decades. If you're reading this letter, then I've accomplished my goal, but at the cost of my life. Understanding the unknown, meeting a being older than mankind, was worth the sacrifice. That stopped me. Meeting a being older than mankind. Sacrifices. What had Grandpa been into during his isolation years? Why couldn't he have become obsessed with golf like every other old guy? The note went on. However, my knowledge came at a cost. In exchange for it, I promised my ashes in return. If they are not delivered promptly, the Nagi Chuwasi will find you. It will not stop its torment until you live up to my side of the deal. I'm not one to apologize, but as a gentleman, I understand that you must be rewarded for your services. I have instructed my lawyer to grant you title to the land and house upon completion of this task. Keep it or sell it back to the locals. It is your decision to make. This is not a jape. If you fail to do this, the next body in the ground will be yours. In death, Walter J. Insington. I stood there dumbfounded, the letter flagging in my hands. Was this real or some elaborate joke? This was a lot to take in and something I needed to mull over. Give myself a night to sleep on it and tackle the problem with fresh eyes. I went to bed that night undecided. I wouldn't wake up the same way. My dreams were so vivid they tipped over into reality. I was in the woods. I remember being cold, goosebumps prickling on my arms. The stench of death lingered in the air. I strode past twisted oaks, peeling birch, and minaret-like pines, each casting shadows that made me think murderous creatures were spying on me. The tree canopies formed a tunnel above my head as I walked the well-worn rut of a path. No sunlight touched this ground. A gathering fog had thickened, restricting my vision to a few feet in front of me. The noises started not long after. Footsteps all around me. Dozens of figures running through the fog, watching me, waiting. The sound of trees crash into the ground. The vibration of their thuds shook my organs. I came across a set of hoofprints in the dirt. They were the size of a car tire. A vine fell from the canopy and struck me on my back. As it hit, an intense burning sensation rippled through my shoulder. I woke up screaming in a cold sweat. My fingers flew to the spot where the vine had struck me. I had expected to find smooth skin, but the tips of my fingers found the flaky peels of a burn. I winced in pain, and when I pulled back my fingers, there were small smears of blood on the tips. I had been marked. I left for the long drive to Grandpa's land in the morning. As the mile markers ticked down, a heavy sense of unease weighed on me. How did I feel guilty for the actions that he took? I glanced over at the urn sitting in the passenger seat and realized this was probably the most time that I had ever spent with him. Even in dust form, he was a menace. I got to the town at dusk. There wasn't much to it. A few squat, red brick buildings down a dying main street. Everything looked ragged, used up, like somebody had painted the town with a brush labeled Blight. I found a motel close to the property and I booked a room. While signing in, I wanted to gauge the town's response to Grandpa. I didn't want to share that we were related, but I needed to know how riled up the hornet's nest was. The buzzing had been evident from his note, but I didn't really understand the rage they had for the man until the first sting found me. Oh, he was a piece of shit that meddled in things he didn't understand for selfish reasons. Doris, the motel worker, told me as she handed over my room key. She was a 70-year-old grandma of 5 who could double as a cookie company mascot. Prim and proper with makeup-assisted rosy cheeks, and hair so well put together you would swear that it was a wig. She pulled no punches. When I heard he died, I thanked the Lord and poured myself a shot of rum. I hadn't drunk a drop of alcohol for 30 years, but it was worth it. Wow, I said, taking the key and praying she didn't connect my last name to his. Why was he so hated? Oh, he went against the wishes of the locals for his own gain. His tortured death was well earned. Tortured? She laughed. Oh yes, if Nagi Chuwasi got a hold of him, then he suffered. Nagi? Chuwasi, monster that stays in the woods. Well, used to anyway. That Insington cursed us all. She stopped and stared at me with a furrowed brow. Why you asking about him? How did you even hear about this? I'm a reporter, I lied. He was a wealthy man who messed around with the supernatural. We're just following up on this lead. Uh-huh, she said, not totally buying my line. You want to interview me? Sure, I said. What do you think Mr. Insington's legacy is around these parts? Oh, he was a plague rat. He helped the darkness escape the woods. It's creeping into our daily lives. The town's dying, you saw it. For that alone, he deserves any ignominy. You can quote me on that too. What do you mean he helped the darkness escape? Oh, he went and bothered the Nagi Chuwasi. It doesn't like to be bothered. Now it's bothering everyone until it gets what it wants. She set her gaze on me. Your father really screwed us over 8 ways from Sunday. Well, hell, the jig was up. I needed to do damage control before I became the target of everyone's ire. Grandfather, I said, and we didn't like him either. I'm here to right his wrongs. Uh-huh, Doris said. Forgive me if I'm skeptical. I'd be skeptical too. I have no desire to keep the land. You can't keep what you don't own. I was confused. He bought the area. I have the paperwork. You may have the paperwork that says you own the land, but paperwork ain't gonna save you when the Nagi Chuwasi comes around. It's been here since the trees were acorns. That whole area is crawling with magical shit, but Nagi Chuwasi is the boss hog. Anyone with any sense stays away from its lair. If I were you, I would heed that advice. And Doris returned to her crossword, and I took that as my cue to leave. She had said her piece to me, and it was clear that she was not a fan. Her anger with Grandpa was palpable. I understood that. I stayed inside my room for the rest of the night. No need to risk anyone else discovering who I was. If Doris told anyone, no matter where I went, I'd be toast. Not wanting to be forced to defend my actions or to be seen as sympathetic to someone I didn't like in the first place held no appeal to me. At about 10, a creeping fog formed and slowly marched toward the motel. It was dense, and after it overtook the building, your vision was limited to a foot or two. The motel itself wasn't creepy, but with the modified landscape, the creep factor ticked up a notch. It was hard not to think Nagi Chuwasi didn't have something to do with this. I had gone out to grab a soda and a snack, only to find Doris standing outside her office, staring off into the thick wall of fog. You see anything? I asked. Oh, when this pea soup rolls in, you only see what Nagi Chuwasi wants you to see, she said, shaking her head. I should ask if you see anything. If I figured out who you were, the Nagi Chuwasi will too. I held up my snacks. I just see trail mix and Darcy Cola. Oh, just wait, she said before turning back into her office. Not at all ominous, I said, returning to my room. At around 2 in the morning, somebody started knocking at my door. Well, knocking is the polite way of saying it. They pounded their fists against the metal. The entire wall rattled from the blows. I woke up in a stupor and took a few seconds to reorient myself. Hello? I called out into the darkness. No response. Great. I cracked open the door. The fog, thicker than before, curled around the edges. It brought with it the stench of bloated, day-old roadkill cooking in the sun. I nearly gagged. Is someone out there? I said to the wall of white fog, the air swirling around the parking lot lights. Nothing. No spoken response, that is. Out in the parking lot, something skittered along the blacktop. Hoofs on asphalt. A deer sprang to mind, but I knew that it wasn't a deer. More movement out in front of me. The sound of limbs dragging along the ground. The discordant noises of the body against the uneven driveway made my blood run cold. Hello, came a voice from the fog. It was ragged, strained. You smell just like him, boy. The voice started cackling. Nah, no time for that. I locked the door and backed away. Any part of my brain that may have been stuck in slumber mode had switched on. The thought of running home and forgetting all of this crossed my mind, but then the sting of pain in my shoulder twitched, and I knew if I ran that it would follow. Something hit my window. I yelped and dove behind my bed. There were 3 more bangs against the glass. I had drawn the curtains closed and was glad that I did. I had no desire to see what was out there. With a sudden crash, the glass shattered and something came flying into my room. The curtains blew back from the force, the fog raced in. The object skidded across my bed and landed with a wet slap. I turned around and tried to block out whatever was happening. When I finally found the bravery to look, I threw up my cola and trail mix. Tiny bits of red and yellow M&Ms floating in a dark cola pond. The hacked-up body of a raccoon slumped against the far wall, its body mangled from dozens of stab wounds. Blood leaching into the carpet fibers, drips of viscera cascading down from my bed. The smell was atrocious. Oh, what's with all the noise? Oh, hell's bells! It was Doris. She was holding a set of antlers, their tips stained red and dripping. Oh, now it's attacking my building. I popped up from behind the bed and the mighty grandma stood there, hands on her hips, staring into my room through the shattered window. What? Was all that I got out. She sighed. Oh, your grandpa did this. He gonna pay for this window. I stuttered. I don't know what happened. Is that blood on the mattress? Oh, some guts too, it's from the raccoon. Jesus Christ and his freeload and disciples, she said. What happened? Oh, you know what happened. Your family has doomed us all. Doris waved her hand at me in disgust. Whatever you came to do, hop to it. You're putting us all in danger. I'm going in the morning, I said. Oh, it's morning now, she said. It's dark. It's only gonna get darker until you get moving, she said, her voice rising. This thing won't leave us alone. It won't leave you alone until you do whatever you came to do. I am, I said, standing and crossing to the shattered window. First light. At this rate, there ain't gonna be a first light. Get moving or get out of the room. Are you kicking me out? I'm setting you on the path to fix this mess. She was serious. I nervously laughed. Doris, be reasonable. You want me to go now? This is me being reasonable, she said in a huff. Leave or else I'll tell the town that rat, Insington's relation, is here and riling up the Nagachuasi. You think I'm being mean? Wait until they come with pitchforks and torches. You can't be. Get moving, or I start calling folks with loaded guns and no scruples. I sighed. I had been backed into a corner by a crotchety septuagenarian, and there was no escape. She was right. If she made a few phone calls, I'd be facing down the entire furious town. There'd be pain. Immense pain. And the other option wasn't great either. Walking into the dark forest while a supernatural creature stalked me, all for the pleasure of burying the ashes of a man that I didn't like in the first place. Some people inherit ugly furniture or worthless tiny spoons when their grandparents die. I inherited a curse. I'd take those tiny spoons any day of the week. 15 minutes later, with Doris haranguing me the entire time, I gathered the map, urn, and a flashlight and set off for Grandpa's house. Even if I wanted to turn tail and run, Doris stayed near my car and made sure that I left for the woods. "Any advice?" I asked before departing. "If you hear a voice in the woods, don't answer," she said. "Now get. The sooner this is over, the sooner we can go back to living a normal life. I don't need to worry about murdered raccoons or talking sparrows or God knows what else." Doris stayed and watched me disappear into the fog, staying even as the clouds overtook me and left me as nothing but a memory. From Doris's directions, I knew the map was about 15 minutes from the hotel. From there, the map would have to suffice. I kept my pace brisk and tried to block out any dark thoughts rolling around inside my head. I focused on the crunching of my own footsteps on the leaf-strewn path. Ahead of me lay an entrance into the forest. It was surrounded by 2 soaring oaks, wooden watchmen, forever holding the line. I climbed over a dead-end road barricade, past the oaks, and took my first few steps into the forest proper. As I did, a chill crossed my skin. The cold and heavy feeling of somebody dragging a dulled knife across your arm. It moved around me like it was absorbing me until it no longer felt different. Just another sensation you become numb to. To keep my mind busy, I counted the steps between markers on the map. Anything to avoid dealing with what might be watching from the fog. 55, 56, 50. 7. A small voice said from the fog. I stopped. I turned the flashlight to the left and scanned the dense fog for anything standing there. The light didn't capture anything. The glance to the right had the same result. The beam bounced because my hand was struggling to stay still. 57, right? The voice was soft and childlike, but not a child's voice. More like a middle-aged woman playing a kid in an animated show. If you close your eyes, you can see a kid, but it's never totally convincing. Deep down, you know it's something else. Shut the light off, or it'll find you. Doris's advice pinged to the front of my mind. Don't speak to anything out there. That seemed simple enough. I didn't know who was out there, but if I ignored them, maybe they would leave me alone. A desperate thought, I know, but I was in the land of desperate moves. 57, I said, my voice shaky. Hey, I was right, the voice said. I'm smart. Are you smart? I started walking again, hastening my pace. Off to my left, something scampered along the path. They were just beyond my line of sight, but they were there keeping pace with me, no matter how fast I walked. Are you alone? If you're out here alone, you're probably not smart, even if you can count to 57 like me. I pulled out the map. I had no way of knowing how close I was to the house, but maybe I'd be able to divine something by looking at the paper. Perhaps one of the trees near me was unique and marked on the map. Hell, maybe it would just come alive and tell me how close I was. Anything was on the table. You're looking for the old man's house, huh? He's dead, you know. Dead, 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 the voice said. Shame. He was nice. He gave me snacks. I called him Snacko. Nearby, a large branch snapped, and that was the breaking point. I started running. It was not the wisest decision, but hearing a cartoonish child's voice tell you that they called your dead grandpa Snacko, followed by a breaking a log off a tree, was enough to get me moving. I tried to stay on the path, but as it twisted toward the house, it became harder to find in the fog. My walking buddy kept pace and hung out in the clouds, walking near me without ever coming into view. Initially, I wanted to get to the house to see what shape it was in and whether there were any other instructions there. Now I wanted to get there to get away from this thing or anything else that might be watching me.
You're going the wrong way. If you want to reach the house, you must stay on the path. The path leads to the house. Follow the path or you'll be in trouble. Trouble, trouble, trouble.
The voice said, chiding me. I know, I snapped. I slapped my hand over my mouth as if that could coax the words back.
You can hear me, huh? I'm Bark. Who are you?
I stopped moving. I needed to recalibrate. Fear was making all my internal systems break down. If I wanted to get through this, I was going to need my wits about me. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and released it. My body trembled from the chill in the air and the adrenaline rushing through my veins. Glancing down, I found the trail path was about a foot to my right. I moved back to it and resolved to stay on this route no matter what. I didn't know these woods, and even with a map, I'd be lost if I strayed too far off course.
Uh-oh,
Bark whispered.
It heard you talking. It's coming for you. Do you hear?
I listened to the surrounding wilderness. There wasn't much noise beyond the wind blowing through the trees. Every once in a while, a fat curling red or yellow leaf would float down from the canopy, breaking through the fog like a revelation, and land on the path. Off in the distance, in the thickest wall of the fog, the rattling of some heavy ramshackle creature lumbering through the woods found my ears. It followed no set path. It made its way through the dense woods by simply pushing trees over. Trunks snapped like twigs. They collapsed to the ground with a leg-wobbling thud.
Here it comes,
Bark sang.
You won't make it to Snacko's house in time, stranger. But I can help. Yes, I can hide you.
Ignoring the voice and feeling my stomach churn as the stomping got closer, I pulled out the map in a vain attempt to convince myself I knew what I was doing. There weren't any recognizable landmarks around me. I had no idea how far I had to go. I was lost.
Nagichuwasi strips the flesh off your bones, you know. Every bit of skin comes off and it turns it into jerky.
Bark said in a voice too chipper for the message that it was sharing.
It takes your bones too, adds them to its hut. It's getting closer too.
I swallowed. What can I do? I finally said.
Oh goody, you can hear me. Do you need my help? I need you to say it.
I need your help.
Hooray, I can help you, but you're gonna owe me snacks.
Yeah, sure, whatever. Where are you?
I'm right here,
the voice said. I glanced toward the voice but saw nothing. At first, Bark cleared its throat, and instead of some monstrous, tree-murdering creature, there was a fat, black squirrel looking up at me. He twitched his nose. His whiskers danced. What the hell?
Oh, come, follow me,
the squirrel said before darting off in the opposite direction of the coming catastrophe. I followed. The squirrel's bushy tail was my guide as we got through the fog. We had gone off the path and the ground under us had softened. Mud caked on the outside of my boots, making them heavier with each step. The squish of the soil beneath me grew louder the deeper we sank into the mud. The squirrel stopped mid-mud puddle and turned its twitching face back to me. Roll in this mud. Why? It can smell you, the mud will hide it. Bark said, flopping onto its side and rolling around in the gloopy mess until its fur was thoroughly caked with the stuff. It reached down with its little paws, scooped up some and rubbed it into its face. Hurry, Snacko 2, rub the mud. I gently set the map and urn down in a dry spot near us and then dropped to my knees and rolled in the mud. As I did, I took handfuls of the stuff and covered every inch of my arms and legs. Bark laughed and clapped as I did. He reminded me to get my head and face too. "It smells your fear and you stink," Bark said, shaking his little head back and forth. So scared, huh?" "Just a bit," I managed. He walked over to my flashlight, smelled it before picking it up and hurled it into the fog. "What the hell?" "It can track that too, Snacko 2. He nodded at my mud-covered face. "You stink like us now. It won't smell you. Come, follow me." He bolted, drops of mud flung off in his wake, and headed for a nearby fallen tree trunk. Time and insects had hollowed it out. Bark stopped at the opening. He nodded at the tree trunk and disappeared into the hollow's darkness. I stopped at the opening inside. Bark ran back into the moonlight and motioned again at the tree. "Come in here. Crawl in or it'll see us." The trunk of the tree was just larger than I was, and it was going to be a snug fit. I dropped to my knees and wriggled my body feet first into the hollow. As I worked my way in, the soft pulp of the tree melted under my boots. After some struggle, I got all the way into the tree, my head just tucked inside. Bark hopped onto my legs and raced up my back. I wanted to scream, but the buzzing in the air around the fallen log scared me into silence. Bark stood on 2 feet and inched up my spine. I felt his little footsteps through my clothes. The buzzing gave way to the loud rattle of something heavy plodding through the nearby woods. As it moved, a cone of silence followed, drowning out all the sounds save for the creaking and cracking of some unseen gigantic creature.
"I can't smell your fear, but I know you're afraid. You've been talking with that noisy squirrel, haven't you?"
I swallowed hard. Bark took a few cautious steps back toward my legs. The nervous twitch of his bushy tail against my tailbone made me instinctively want to flinch. I knew if I gave in to my natural desires at that moment, this creature would find us both. So I put my lower lip between my teeth and gently bit down, using the pain to keep my brain occupied.
"I don't have to tell you that I'll find you. I found you in your dreams already. What I will keep a secret is what I'll do to you when I find you."
The Nagachuasi hissed.
"Time is meaningless to me. I can wait forever. Can you?"
It started cackling and stomped down with its heavy foot. It made the log jump off the ground. As it crashed back down, the wood splintered and more pulp fell onto my body. I prayed the log hadn't cracked enough to expose our hiding spot. My nerves were shot. My teeth drove into my lip again, and the coppery taste of blood oozed onto my taste buds. The pain was sharp, and it took everything in my body not to yelp.
"I've come to collect what's owed."
Goosebumps raced down my body. Bark's twitchy nature only made it worse. He inched toward my ear, using his little hands to grip my lobe, and whispered,
"Snacko 2. The Nagachuasi means to hurt you."
I wanted to bat him away and also scream, "I know that, Bark," but the looming presence of a timeless ghoul kept me in check. The ground started shaking again, the soft pulp above me falling into my face, and the Nagachuasi drifted away, back into the fog, deeper into the woods. I finally let out the breath that I had apparently been holding. Bark crawled over my head until he was standing directly in front of my face, his bushy tail brushing up against my nose. I held back a sneeze as he poked his head out.
"It's gone. Come quickly. Snacko's nest is nearby,"
he said, skipping away from the log. I inched my way out of the hollow, birthed from a wooden womb until I finally found myself back outside on all fours. I stood, shook loose the log's placenta, and glanced around for Bark. I didn't find him, but I found dozens of clover footprints all around us. some as large as tires. I swallowed hard.
Snacko 2, this way,
Came a small voice from the fog. I shook my head. I'm following the directions of a talking squirrel and headed toward where I'd heard his voice. I might as well lean into this insanity. 5 minutes later, we came upon a small house nestled among peeling birch trees. House was a generous term. This thing was a glorified shack. My grandpa had more money than a Texas oilman and the taste of a French aristocrat. Yet his dream house and his dream location was nothing more than a slightly upgraded ice fishing shanty. Something cobbled together like a Depression-era Hooverville house. I was confused. This is what he wanted me to have. I laughed at the cosmic joke of him leaving me the only place in the world worse than my own ramshackle apartment. Grandpa had jokes. What a guy.
Here is Snacko's palace.
Bark said. Oh, some palace, I muttered.
He keeps the snacks inside. Let's go inside.
He added, darting for the door. I pushed it open to reveal, well, not much. There was an overturned deer's skull on top of an ancient cabinet, an oaken barrel repurposed as a chair, and a wire milk crate with a note under a rock. There wasn't even a floor, just well-worn dirt. Dozens of different footprints on it, from man to animal and back again. Even a few that looked protozoic. What the hell?
Snacks in the cabinet.
Bark said, reaching there in 2 jumps. I left the tree rat to jump in front of the cabinet and walk to the note. It was written in my grandfather's hand. It read, "If you've made it to the shack, you've crossed over into the cauldron. You cannot escape without burying my remains now. It won't let you leave. The only way out is through." Great. The note continued, "You'll probably have to give the squirrel a treat. It's wise to do so, as it will be a big help to your mental health. He chatters. Take the skull and fill it with the purified water in the cabin. Mix this with the liquid in the pool of nightmares. Pour the mixture over your head and it will guide you to where you need to bury my remains. If the Nagachuwasi finds you, it will exact its revenge." He ended it there with a vague threat. I crossed to the cabinet and pulled it open. Inside, there were only 2 things. One was a stale oatmeal cookie. The other was a wooden cup filled with foul-smelling water. I dropped the cookie to Bark, who gobbled it down in 6 or 7 bites. He wobbled to the wall and plopped down, his belly fat with cookie bits. I took the cup of stank water and poured it into the deer's hollowed-out skull. The bones were carved with symbols that I had never seen before. I ran my fingers over them, and as I did, they briefly turned red before dimming to black. "We should go," I said. "I don't want to be here forever."
Oh, I am full,
Bark said.
I will nap now, but I'll find you soon. Travel well, Snacko 2.
With that, he covered his face with his tail and dozed off to sleep, and the little rat had the nerve to start snoring. I sighed, placed the skull on the milk crate, and pulled out the map. If I stuck to the path to the north, I would run into the pool of nightmares. It didn't sound fun, but nothing about this trip had. I sighed, gathered my things, and left the shack. The fog was cookie batter thick now, and the way it billowed along the path resembled the wriggling of a white snake. The northern patch was easy to find, but the surrounding skies were darker than before. I wasn't sure how long I had been out here, but I hoped the morning sun would soon rise. Until then, I was stuck with whatever the silvery moonlight showed me. I walked in silence this time, no counting. I kept my ears trained for any noise out in the void. The Nagachuwasi hadn't left my thoughts since the encounter. I didn't even get a look, but I knew that it was unholy. Not from this world. It was something I had no desire to see. Glancing down at the map, I saw that I was coming up to the pool. I wasn't sure where it would be or how large, but I kept my head on a swivel in case Grandpa's map was inaccurate. A horrible idea came to me then. What if he had been lying to me this whole time? The man's stock in trade was deception. He made his bones through dishonesty. I wasn't even sure if the ashes that I had been schlepping around were his. Maybe he had wanted me to do this to inflict one last horror on a family that he hated, a family that had turned its back on him. Maybe he wanted me dead or worse, needed me dead to be resurrected. 1,000 different scary movie plots flooded the front of my brain. While I was indexing and processing, I didn't notice the creaking from a nearby swaying tree. That changed when it walked onto the path in front of me. It was an oak, mighty and full. It reminded me of the wooden watchman from before. Its sprawling canopy dimmed the already little light from the silvery moon. The roots formed feet that allowed it to walk onto the path. A tree with feet would be freakish enough, but this one had something a little extra for my nightmares. It had a face.
Et toi, Morest.
It asked in a voice so low that it rumbled my bones. I don't have any more treats. It took a step closer, its branches arcing toward my body. From profile, it would look like a man standing under a tree being violently blown to one side by a fierce wind. I stared at its wooden face, focusing on its mouth of jagged wooden teeth. They were the color of red wine with bits of flesh stuck in the gaps.
Et toi, Morest, Boja.
It said, the word still a mystery, but the menace in his voice clear as day. I placed the skull, urn, and map to the side and raised my hands to show that I came in peace. I've come to right a wrong. I mean you no harm.
Pieshi namesake.
The tree said, its mouth forming into an unsettling smile. A single leaf from the canopy ripped away from a branch and gently floated down toward me. I followed it as it softly landed at my feet. It was almost beautiful in a way. Maybe the tree had understood that I didn't mean to harm it. Then the leaf sprouted little arms and legs. It turned to me, red eyes glowing and a mouth of tiny, toothpick-sharp teeth snarling. Instinctively, I stomped and it crunched under me. A pool of sap oozed out from under my boot. I looked up at the tree's bewildered face. We stared at one another before it bellowed, blowing my hair back and sending gobs of rotten flesh onto my face. It headbanged its canopy forward, sending hundreds of leaves tumbling down. As they did, they all sprouted arms and legs and screamed in unison. Oh shit, I said, stumbling back. As I did, the trees sent a root beneath my foot, causing me to tumble to the ground. I fell back with a brain-scrambling crash that caused my vision to go blurry. I shook my head in time to see hundreds of murderous leaves screaming at me as they gently floated down. There were heavy thumps behind me so loud that the surrounding trees shivered. The water in the deer skull jumped and sloshed around, a tempest in a brain cavity. I turned, fearing the Nagachuasi was coming up behind to grind me into dust, but that wasn't it. I had to rub my eyes to make sure that I wasn't imagining things. It was Bark, now the size of an office building, sprinting toward the furious tree and its screaming leaves.
Gather your things and run for the pool, Snacko 2.
I didn't hesitate. I scrambled to my pile, scooped everything into my arms, and ran down the path, just as the massive squirrel slammed into the walking tree. Bark knocked the tree into the fog. Their tussling, screaming, hissing, and squeaking echoed all around me. Dozens of leaves landed on the ground and advanced toward me, but my boots made quick work of them. The ruins along the skull glowed, dim at first, but as I ran farther away the path, their intensity grew. I let them guide me until at last, they were glowing so brightly that they lit up the area around me like a red halo. Their light reflected off the jet-black pool of water that showed up right in front of me. If the light hadn't been so intense, I would have just stumbled into it. My hands were trembling. In the distance, the sounds of bark wrestling with the tree and the tiny murderous yells from the fighting leaves filled the night air. The birch house note instructions came back to me, and I dipped the skull into the pool, mixing the two liquids. As the dark black water mixed in, it fizzed and bubbled at first and then went still. Taking that as a sign that the mixture was complete, I raised it over my head and tipped the concoction over me. As soon as the liquid touched my head, I was transported to another place. All the sound around me had disappeared, and when I opened my eyes, it was as if I hadn't opened them at all. Everything was black, darker than I'd ever seen. The dark you imagine in the deepest recesses of space. "Hello?" I called out, but the only response I received was an echo. I started walking, or what I thought was walking. Truthfully, I didn't know if I was moving anywhere. My limbs shuffled, but the scenery never changed. Just as I was wondering what the hell I was going to do, I got the distinct sensation of falling in the pit of my stomach. I blinked and I found myself suddenly outside my apartment, not standing in the courtyard but floating outside my bedroom window, looking in. It was the night before I left for this place, the moments before my vivid nightmare. I tried banging on the window, but my hand made no sound on the pane. I tried to pry it open, but it wouldn't budge. Nothing I did affected anything around me. All I could do was observe. As I turned in my bed, my closet door popped open. It slowly squeaked on its hinges, as if whatever was pushing the door open was testing to see if I would wake up. When I didn't budge, the door opened wider and the moonlight reflected off of a snaky and bone-white limb as it inched along the floor. Red eyes glowed from the crack in the door. I tried banging on the glass, but again no sound. But it caught someone's attention. The monster in the closet turned from my sleeping form to me. We locked eyes, and when it grinned at me, its white teeth shimmered in the darkness. It was the Nagachuasi, and it knew that I was trapped. It reveled in that fact. It kept its eyes on me, a stupid grin plastered to its face, as the arm shimmied up the bed and touched my sleeping foot. A funny thing happened when the Nagachuasi's appendage touched my foot in this vision. I felt it on my actual foot. I tried to shake off the sensation, but it did nothing to stop it. As the arm extended up my sleeping body, my awake body experienced everything. I tried batting at it with my hands, but it was in my mind, messing with my brain and my body. A total violation that I was powerless to stop. The flopping limb finally reached my shoulder and inched back. The tip grew red and hot like an old car lighter before pressing into my skin. It stung my back and I swatted at the ghost. My skin bubbled. The burning sensation bled into my muscle fibers. Nagachuasi's limb quickly recoiled back into the closet. As it did, it hissed,
"There is nowhere you can go that's safe."
I blinked and found myself in my college linguistics lecture hall. It was packed with students absorbed in a test. I looked down at the paper and didn't have a clue what any of this was. The language was in the same runic symbols on the side of the deer skull. The creeping anxiety of being unprepared rose inside my heart. As I stressed about solving the language, the person next to me hissed. I turned and saw a person entirely made up of wriggling snakes. They hissed again, and then the snakes all said in unison, "Where are your clothes?" I glanced down and realized that I too had a snake out. Shame blanketed me, and I stood up, covering myself with the test paper. More faces turned to me, and in that dreamlike way, some I recognized and some I didn't. Some had faces, some didn't, but they all had disdain for my nude presence. "You don't belong here," they told me telepathically. Their words strafed my soul, leaving it in tatters.
"Nobody wants you here."
The snake man dissolved. and the hundreds of snakes slithered throughout the room. I spied the exit and I sprinted for it. As soon as I pushed open the door, I found myself standing in a darkened hallway. I was dressed again, this time in a jumper with the Care Bears on the front. The hallway came back to me as well. This was my grandpa's old house. I was still a child the last time that we had been there, and apparently a huge fan of the Care Bears. But this hallway stood out because it always bothered me. Unease always found me when I stepped foot on that runner. It was one of those childhood fears that take root when your brain is still wet mud, before rationality blossoms, sensation over reason, instinctual fear, the way a gazelle knows to run from a lion. I toddled down the hall trying to speak, but it only came out as gibberish. My parents were fighting with my grandpa in the other room. Their words were foreign to my ears, but their tone was apparent. I moved further away from their bombast. Someone called my name from the shadows, soft and pleasant.
Hey boy, come and let me show you something.
I glanced back toward where the fighting was happening, their voices raised and full of venom. It's not somewhere that I wanted to be. The voice sensed my hesitation.
They aren't even paying attention to you. I will. Follow me, boy. Let's have fun.
A hesitant step forward. The fibers of the hallway runner tickled my feet as I took a step toward the shadows, toward that sweet voice. But something in my gut swirled. My legs grew heavy and I found myself unable to move them any longer. The voice sensed this too.
Oh, don't be a fool like your parents. They only want to scold you. Come, boy, let me show you the unseen wonders of this world and the next and the next.
No, I say, the baby babble falling by the wayside. No, 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 no.
I have candy, gifts, happiness lies near me. Just walk over, I'm friendly. I'll wave hello,
they said. From the dark of the room, a stark white hand emerged and tried to coax me over. Its fingers impossibly long and tapered to knife points.
Oh, come, boy, let us play together.
No, I said again, taking a step back.
I'm going to have to eat you then,
the voice said. As the words escaped its lips, piercing red eyes and a new moon-white smile formed in the shadows. The Nagachuwasi.
And give me what is mine, boy.
On unsteady toddler legs, I turned, nearly wobbling to the ground, and ran away from the dark. If the Nagachuwasi followed, I couldn't tell and didn't glance back to see. I ran towards the heated words in the other room. I reached the end of the hallway and finally glanced back. Spindly legs, long and narrow like a spider but made from hundreds of human bones, inched out from the shadows. A second pair of hands came next. But unlike the knife points, these fingers haven't collected enough bones yet. The fleshy skin flopped around like a tomato plant tendril, looking for something to attach itself to. That awful smile never going away. Tears welled up in my eyes. My hands balled into fists. My stomach acid a churning sea whipped up by an approaching hurricane. I wanted to go, but my legs were stuck in neutral.
I am timeless, boy. I'll find you soon enough.
No, I say, finally feeling my foot lift from the ground. I turned away from the monster and quickly rounded the corner into utter and total darkness. The forest floor rose quickly and I hit it full force with my chest. All the air shot out of me like a deflating balloon. I rolled onto my back and sucked in for air. It felt impossible at first, but gradually it found my lungs, and the painful spasms ceased. Calm washed over me and I laughed.
Miss Neko too, are you okay?
Bark, now regular bark-sized, stood on my stomach and stared at me with concern. I never thought I'd be happy to see a squirrel, but here I was, wishing I could shrink down and hug this little guy with all my might. You saved me, I said. Why?
Bark helps those who give him snacks.
What happened to the tree guy? Bark pulled out an acorn and gnawed at it.
He will not be a problem, nor will his delicious children,
he said, finishing his most recent snack. But how did you get so big? And Bark shrugged.
Oh, the moment called for it.
But that's impossible, I said, realizing that I was currently talking to a squirrel. Impossibility in this place had a high bar to clear, yet we seemed to be pole vaulting over it with reckless abandon, Olympic-level leaps.
When Bark needed to be brave, Bark was brave,
he said. Why didn't you do that when the Nagachuwasi trapped us inside a hollow log?
That wasn't the time to be brave.
I shooed him off my belly and stood. My body ached and I wanted nothing more than to pull a Bark and curl up and sleep. The pool of nightmares was gone. Now it was just a thin layer of slick mud with tiny squirrel footprints in it. According to the map, the Nagachuwasi's hut wasn't far, maybe 30 yards or so. The knot in my stomach told me that it would be around here too. The skull that I had brought with me was gone. All that remained was my grandpa's urn. If I buried it outside the hut, I'd be done with all this madness.
We're nearly there,
Bark said.
It's along the path, but I cannot come with you.
Why?
It is not my journey, Snacko-2,
he said as scampering up a nearby tree, nearly lost in the surrounding fog.
Go, before the Nagachuwasi hears us talking,
he added before disappearing into the canopy of the tree. The world went silent. Come on, I said, stooping to pick up the urn. You're more trouble than you're worth, Gramps. I tucked it under my arm and followed along the path. The only way out was through. I needed to finish this. If I didn't, Doris and her rowdy gang of gun-touting townies would have a few choice words for me. Namely, any last requests. I wasn't sure what awaited me ahead. I had already gone through enough in the service of a man who hated my guts. Not just mine, but his own kids' guts. Hell, the nearby town's guts, the world's guts. A man so filled with hate and disdain for anyone that wasn't himself that he died doing something that he had been warned against. Instead of listening to anyone's warnings to stop, he pushed forward. How do you get there as a person? How do you stop someone from doing that? In front of me, the rumble of heavy plodding broke the silence of the world. The fog kept me from getting a glimpse. I took that as a win. As it moved, old growth branches cracked and snapped like twigs. Whatever this thing was, it moved at a steady, if slow, pace. I kept up my track. If the Nagachuwasi was going to come for me now, I had nowhere to hide. I had no friends or rodents to aid me in defeating it. I'd have to do this alone. That made me shiver. I had no magical abilities. I couldn't eat a stale cookie and become the Hulk. What chance did I have against this thing? The plodding stopped about 10 feet from me. Ahead in the fog, the faintest yellow light glowed. An unmoving lantern suspended 15 feet in the air. Something strange, well, stranger happened. The fog in front of me lifted. I had a clear line of sight to the glowing hut. My jaw went slack. It was Nagachuwasi's hut. An earthen hovel constructed of dirt, fallen logs, moss, and dead leaves. 4 hairy, stem-like legs held it aloft, each ending in a cloven hoof. The leg was a patchy mix of black, brown, and white fur. In the sections where the skin had ripped away, the straining muscles and bones were visible. The lantern hung from one of the 2 front-facing windows. The door was made of dried, stretched human skin, where their faces had been, creating a demented polka dot look. I've come to bury these ashes. My grandpa's ashes. I think you knew him well. In the window opposite the lantern, a pair of glowing red eyes emerged. I was being watched, though examined was more apt. The Nagachuwasi didn't speak a word, it didn't move. didn't do any of the things I expected it to do. I have nothing to do with any wrong that he may have caused you. We weren't close. I just want to put an end to this.
There is no end to this cycle.
The Nagachuwasi hissed from the window.
I am timeless.
I have nothing to do with you. The eyes at the window disappeared. Immediately, the sensation of hot breath on my neck made me shiver. The Nagachuwasi was behind me.
I have everything to do with you.
It hissed. At once, its tendrils pressed into my skin, searching for something to latch onto. My skin burned from their touch.
This moment has been coming for a long time. Your grandpa brought it upon your lineage. Now the poison seeps into you.
My body seized. A tear fell down my cheek. My heart raced and blood whooshed in my ears. My legs neared a catastrophic collapse. And then I heard a squeak on the wind. An alarm. No, a call to action. Something stirred deep within me. No, I said, my voice soft. No, it doesn't. I took a step away from the Nagachuwasi. It was still attached, but its grasp slipped somewhat. Bolder and louder, I said, No, it doesn't. I've come here to bury my grandpa's ashes, to end this.
Oh, how brave our little boy has gotten. But how brave are you really?
Another step and I was free of its clutches. I dropped to the ground, pressed my hands into the soft dirt and started digging. I am here to bury my grandpa's ashes as you demanded and leave this all behind me. The Nagachuwasi shoved me, causing me to fall forward and knock the top off the urn. Grandpa's ashes spilled out and mingled with the dirt. I turned to see the creature, but it was gone. A familiar voice called out to me, one I hadn't heard for years. Grandpa. I turned and the man loomed over me, but he wasn't made of flesh and blood, no. He had been reconstructed from the spilled ashes of the now empty urn.
The reason I hated your father and your mother was because of you, he said. I hated you from the moment you slithered out of your mother's diseased hole. I hated the moment you first laid eyes on me with your childish cooing and foolish brain. I hated you because you were weak and unworthy of my wealth, of my name. You were a mistake, nothing more than an untended wound left to fester. A dullard, a boring fool. You were born nothing, have become nothing, and will die with nothing. You are my greatest shame and the reason that I sought to escape in the arms of the Nagachuwasi. You are the reason for your imminent demise, boy. You're a failure in every sense of the word.
I lowered my gaze. I didn't see his face, but his smug smile was imprinted on my mind. The Nagachuwasi had tried threats, it tried horror, it tried violence. Now it was trying shame. Like an overly cocky fighter finally finding an opponent's weak spot, it hammered away waiting to deliver its knockout punch. But I knew how to take a punch, and I found the strength to throw my own. No, I said firmly, my eyes meeting his. The only failure that I see is the husk of a sad, lonely old man so desperate for connection that he sought refuge with another monster. But monsters don't play fair. The Nagachuwasi saw through you, used you, and now wants to use me too. But I won't let it. I've come to bury you, and that's what I intend to do. I kicked the urn into the little hole that I had dug and dropped to my knees. As I shoveled handfuls of dirt over the brass, the ashes puffed away, and the Nagachuwasi appeared in its place. It shot out its arms, wrapped them around mine, but I kept shoveling dirt onto the pile.
I am timeless. You cannot escape me.
It screamed as it pulled me closer to its open arms. I wrenched myself free and kicked a clump of dirt at the urn. It sailed through the air and landed on top of the brass, covering it completely. Grandpa was buried, finally. The grip on my arms loosened. The Nagachuwasi was gone. The weight that came off my body nearly made me take flight. I was free of it, of him, of the cycle forever. I stood, caught my breath as the tears began welling in my eyes. I laughed to stop the sobs, but they came anyway. I let them, welcomed them. This wasn't sadness, this was joy. A joy so deep the devil himself would have a hard time not smiling. After I caught my breath, I sighed. I'm never coming back here again. I pulled the map out of my pocket. A fresh path had been created. It led to the front door of the Nagachuwasi's hut. What had once been a dead end was now my exit. I lowered the map and watched as the house took 5 rumbling steps toward me before settling down to the forest floor. The front door creaked open. I kept waiting for the Nagachuwasi to come walking out, taking revenge on me, but nobody came out. It wanted me to go in, so I went. You know you have a squirrel sunbathing on your rocking chair, the friendly UPS driver said, handing over a package. I ain't never seen one sleep with people around. I glanced out to find a black squirrel sprawled out in a ray of sunlight that lashed across my porch and smiled. Oh, he just ate, I said. He always naps after. The UPS driver laughed. That's the life, huh? Fat and happy. I'll take happy. The squirrel can keep fat. The driver laughed. You have a good one, he said, before turning to the squirrel and nodding. You too, big guy. I smiled and wished him well. I glanced over at the newest resident in my apartment building's courtyard oak tree and shook my head. Imagine how shocked he'd be if he heard you speak. Who doesn't like a good road trip, right? The sights, the people, the experience as a whole is just amazing. Or maybe that's just me. I've dedicated the last month to driving across the country. I'm luckily able to, as my job allows me to work from anywhere that has an internet connection, cybersecurity to be exact. I started in Florida and worked my way through the southeast region of the US. After moving through both of the Carolinas, I decided to swing by Tennessee while I was around. And I've got to say, that place was beautiful. The busy city areas meshing with the deep forest was an amazing experience to be a part of. However, it wasn't always good. For example, in some of the more densely forested areas, I found it difficult to find coffee shops and other places with free Wi-Fi to work at. Luckily, however, GPS exists and it's usually not too long until I find one. And if I can't, then I'll find somewhere where I can rent out for the night while I work. Well, one day after having very bad luck finding any establishments with free Wi-Fi so deep in the mountains, I got very lucky and I was able to find a very nice 3-bedroom Airbnb cabin in the mountains for only $50 a night. After confirming payment for one night, I headed to the area where the house was at. As I'm driving to the cabin, I can't help but feel uneasy. This place is really deep into the forest. I must have been driving for at least 30 minutes straight, just going deeper into the forested mountain range. All the while, the road keeps thinning and lowering in quality all the way. What had started as a strong, well-made 2-lane asphalt road eventually turned into a decrepit 1-lane dirt road that barely even had a clear path. Mostly thanks to the massive trees on either side, accompanied by the brush occasionally having grown on the road. Why would somebody live this far out? I asked myself, frustrated with the condition of the area. Even this far into the road trip, I haven't gone down a road this bad yet. First time for everything, I guess. Eventually, after a few minutes of driving down the rundown road, if you could call it that, and I finally see it, the cabin. And I won't lie, this place was definitely worth the drive. It looked to be about 2,000 square feet, made of very fine, finished wood logs and gorgeous windows, giving an amazing look into the forest. Walking into the house, I'm surprised with how homey it looks. The first room is the living room, lit by a familiar and warming orange glow. Looking straight past the living room is the kitchen, sizable but not large, and nothing really notable about it. The living room, however, had a very elevated roof and a fireplace to the right wall. A few taxidermied animal heads lay about it, as well as the skull of an animal that I don't think I've ever seen. Looking left of the living room, I see a sectioned couch with a very large mounted TV on a stand on the other side of the room. Looking left, I see the rest of the living room, which wasn't really anything special. Just a dining table and a few other pieces of furniture that you would expect to see in any house. Past the living room to the left was a sizable hallway, which is where my host told me the bathrooms and master bedroom were. I walked down the hall to the door at the very end, which led to the master bedroom, and again upon walking in, I'm blown away by the interior. It had a huge and very soft bed with enough pillows to smother a giant, and in front of the bed on the wall was another huge plasma screen TV. Walking to the right, I enter the bathroom, and of course, it's lavish. Large granite countertops and a marble bathtub, as well as a huge walk-in shower. There's no way this place is only $50 a night. I say to myself, blown away by the sheer luxury of a house so far away from civilization. I set my stuff down and head to the back door, just past the kitchen, to get a look at the backyard. And it's even better than the front. There's a sizable pond that drains to a large stream flowing through the mountain. And of course, a well-kept lawn all the way up into the tree line about 50 feet away. I stand there for a moment, impressed by the amazing area that I found myself in. It almost feels too good to be true. Walking back inside the lavish cabin, I go to the room to get my laptop so that I can start working, and luckily, despite the GPS shenanigans, this place does have a stable internet connection. And so I begin my work. The hours fly by and I don't even realize how long I've been working until my app for work closes abruptly. I look at the Wi-Fi icon at the bottom of my laptop, and sure enough, it's dark, indicating that my Wi-Fi connection has stopped working for some odd reason. And glancing at the time, I see it's 8 p.m. Looking out of the living room window, I also see the sun beginning to lower in the sky, but that isn't my biggest concern. My boss told me if I'm not done with this project by next week, I won't hold my position much longer, so getting this Wi-Fi back on is my biggest focus. Walking outside with my phone flashlight, I go around the house looking for cables that might have gotten unhooked or unplugged in some way. Eventually, I find the internet cable running down the side of the house and into the ground. But I'm dumbstruck as I realize the cable and the wall that it's running along has massive and deep claw-looking incisions on it. "You live in the forest and you don't have protected lines," I yell out in frustration. Knowing that there's no way I can finish my work like this, I send a message to the host that I'm leaving early and of course, let him know something shredded his cables. But when I get to the front door, I see that there's pieces of paper hanging on it. At the top, above a page full of writing, is bold, underlined letters that read, "View ASAP." Taking the curious-looking papers off the door, I take it inside and begin to read it. "To whomever is reading, I'm sorry for what you're going to go through these next 48 hours, and it's likely that you will not be alive by the end of them. However, if you read this carefully and take it seriously, you might make it out of this alive. So keep reading and take this serious. This house was built for people like you, unsuspecting travelers, to be a part of a game. Not a game like the ones you see on TV. You are now a new toy for an ancient evil. No matter how skeptical or superstitious that sounds, it's the truth. Many years ago, miners uncovered something deep in the mountainside that they never should have, just a couple of miles from where you are right now. Every year it demands someone take part in its demented games, and if they survive 48 hours, they get to live free. but in the past 6 years, nobody has survived, and I doubt that you will be any different. This thing is good at what it does. But there is hope. There are rules you can follow that will greatly increase the chances of you surviving. These rules are a major part of whether or not you're still alive by the end of the next 2 days. Now this entity is clever, and it likes to play with its food. It will likely attempt to break your mental before ever physically harming you. However, its highly unpredictable nature makes it impossible to know its intention. It is likely that it will do something neither you or I can plan for, so always be on your toes. Now that you know the entity and the situation, here are the rules for you. 1. Do not go outside after dark unless you have to, and be alert when it is. This is when it is most aggressive and active. 2. Prioritize lights. It thrives in the dark. If the power goes out at some point, you need to go outside to the backyard and get them back on via resetting the power box just past the tree line. If the power box fails to reset, hide somewhere in the house and pray that it doesn't know where you're at. 3. Barricade the windows. The windows are the easiest place of entry, and they won't protect you for even a second once it arrives. There are supplies in the basement for you. Open the trapdoor in the master bedroom closet behind the suitcases. 4. 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. are the only 2 hours each day where it will not attack you. I highly suggest that you use these hours for sleep. 5. It will come for you after 2 to 3 hours of you reading this. Prepare as soon as possible. 6. Lock the doors, but do not barricade yourself inside. The doors will hold and you may need to go on foot. Although if you do, you're pretty much already dead. You can't outrun this thing in its own backyard. Again, I'm sorry and good luck. After I finish the papers, I just stand there for a moment, analyzing the words on the page for a few moments, dumbstruck, not knowing what to think. Was this a prank by the locals? No, I'm too deep in the forest for that. Hell, I don't know, there's no way this is real. This is something that you would write in a book. I go back to my room, balling up and tossing the fake paper into the empty fireplace for the next resident to ash. Grabbing my belongings I still had barely gotten unpacked. I rushed out of the house, heading straight for my truck. I had just thrown my stuff in the back seat when I noticed something was off. My back right wheel looked weird, like maybe it was going flat. A closer look around my truck reveals something terrifying. All my tires had been slashed. It takes me a moment to fully understand the gravity of the situation. Before I'm even able to let it, I hear a terrifying sound from deep in the forest. It sounded like a person screaming like they had just had every bone in their body broken, but it wasn't right. It had some sort of distortion in it, like a cross between man and beast, like it wanted something. I don't care how dangerous or stupid it is to drive on slashed tires on a mountain. I'm getting out of here. I jump in the driver's seat, practically slam the keys into the ignition, turn, and nothing happens. The engine doesn't even stutter. There is nothing but silence. I get out of my truck and rush to the front hood and swing it open. What I see inside shakes me to my core. My entire engine block had claw marks, destroying it entirely. A mess of slashed wires and bolt pieces lay scattered. Spilled oil strewn across unevenly. Fresh oil. This was recent. I don't know why, but I just stood there staring. My mind was broken by the unbelievable horror of the situation. My deep thinking is broken again by the inhumane howl again, this time seeming angrier or maybe closer. This brings me to my bearings and I begin sprinting back to the cabin. My eyes continually locking onto the tree line all the way. I swing open the door and instinctually lock it between my fingers, almost autonomously. Now rapidly breathing, trying to make sense of everything, I notice something in the fireplace. The papers. I ran toward them and frantically pulled them out and unfurled them from the crumpled ball that I had left them in. I began scanning the paper, looking for anything that it might have told me to do first. The rules. Rules 3 and 5 catch my eyes first. They seem to be the first things that I should prioritize. I guess it's time to find this trap door that the third rule had mentioned. Walking back to the master bedroom with haste, I could almost feel the sweat collecting on my brow, as I slowly realized whoever wrote those papers weren't lying, and I may very well be dead in the next few hours. Arriving at the master bedroom's closet, I opened the slide door and analyzed my surroundings. Clothes, shoes, suits, and suitcases. Kneeling before them, I reached to the back and pulled the suitcases half sloppily to the side, and it reveals the top of the trapdoor. An old, dry, dull-colored slab of wood with rusted hinges and a crooked doorknob. Throwing the rest of the suitcases carelessly to the side, I reach for the knob and twist, having to use my whole arm to get the knob to move. And as it does, the door pops forward for a moment before eerily creaking its way open. Looking down, all I can make out is a set of stairs that look like they might collapse with every step, plunging you into the void of darkness in the basement. I guess the luxury ends here. Pulling my phone out of my pocket, I turn on the flashlight, the beam of light penetrating the veil of darkness instantly. The white light reveals a medium-sized concrete-walled room covered in cobwebs and at least 50 planks of wood, the kind you always smell before you see at appliance stores. I hunch my back and twist my hips at the waist, trying not to get stuck in the tiny door frame. As soon as my shoe hits the first plank of the stairs, I hear a loud creak echo through the silence. I'm also hit with a putrid stench, a cross between roadkill and stuffy century-old air. Regardless, I push through, each stair wailing at me as I make my way down. The final step, I can move my flashlight around the right corner to see a workbench with various tools and nails on it, but I don't think you could set anything more on it before it collapses, because of course its condition is highly subpar. I push my light further right and nearly drop it when the light makes out the decomposing body of someone. Their stomach has massive slashes in it and they seem to be missing an arm. Before I can even make out more of the figure on the ground, I bolt around and up the screaming stairs, not caring if one of them snapped. Once I'm back in the master bedroom, I can finally think rationally. Why did I run? I mean, sure, there's a literal dead body down there, but there wasn't any present danger, but God, that was horrifying. I now know for sure nothing in that letter was a lie. This was probably one of the earlier victims of this evil entity or whatever it was. Regardless, I don't want to be ended in the same way they or any of the others met their demise. I make my way back down there to take stock of the materials, trying not to think about the rotted corpse's stench. After a very fast evaluation and knowing that my time is limited, I make my way back up to the room and dump all of my belongings out of the massive travel bag, and I trek back to the basement to stock up on some very well needed supplies. I stuff the bag with anything that looks like it can be used, from saw blades to small bolts. Anything will help. The planks were hard to fit in my bag, but I was luckily able to position them semi-vertical in a way that allowed me to lug them with me, completely convinced in my mind the extra weight is surely going to destroy one, if not all, of the planks. Luckily it doesn't, and I make it to the top and immediately begin working tirelessly, boarding any window that I see, hastily slamming each nail and sawing each board to fit the right dimensions, making multiple trips back and forth for more supplies. Out of respect, I also grabbed the rug from the living room and covered the body in the basement. As little as it is, it's the best that I can do for now. After around an hour and a half of tireless labor, I finally nailed the last board into place over the living room window. I'm not done working, however. I also go into the kitchen and grab all the knives I see and place a few scattered around each room in case I need to grab one in a hurry, placing a smaller pocket knife into my shoe just in case. Judging by the paper, it won't do much, but something is better than nothing, and right now, I need all the comfort that I can get. After truly finishing my work, I grab the papers off the ground and continue to read, looking for the next thing that I should do. It doesn't seem like there's anything more that I need to do, other than plug my phone in and then sit and wait until it's time. Pacing around the living room, I found myself compulsively checking the time, counting down each minute, and it's been about 2 hours now, so the game should be beginning at any moment, and lucky for me, it's nighttime. Just 46 more hours to go, I think to myself, not feeling any more at ease. A few more anxious minutes passed and I hear a familiar sound. I hear those same inhuman cries coming from the front of the house. It sounds terrifyingly close this time, just past the tree line if I had to guess. The game has begun. Almost instantly, I reach for the nearest knife and I hold it tight, waiting for something to happen, although for at least a minute there's nothing. But then the silence is broken by a loud slam on the front door. It makes me jump hard, but luckily I manage to keep myself quiet. And then comes another and another. The slamming on the door becomes more and more frantic and aggressive. The slamming becomes so hard that I was certain the door would come down at any second. As I could see with each impact, the door shakes and trembles. Large impacts on thick wood became a ringing in my ears as the unrelenting slams continued. The sound of whatever this was so desperately attempting to get in puts fear so potent into my body that I can only put my back to a wall and slide down, pointing my knife towards the door, tears rolling down my face. Thankfully, after many agonizing moments, the pounding at the door pauses. I can hear a muffled, low growl come from outside, before heavy footsteps tread off somewhere into the forest. Now I'm left on the floor, back to the wall in the fetal position, adrenaline coursing through every ounce of me. The cops aren't going to save me. It's me against whatever this thing is. But what can I do other than wait this thing out? It's clear by the slamming on the door that this thing is far stronger than me or anybody that I know. A knife isn't going to do anything to this thing. I sit there for a moment, racking my brain for any kind of solution that might give me an edge, and then I'm hit with a stroke of genius. There were taxidermied animal heads on the fireplace wall. There is a chance there could be a gun laying around here somewhere the note did not detail, and maybe if I'm lucky, ammo as well. Where to look, I think to myself, racking my brain for ideas. Let's start with the closets, I say to myself, hoping that there is at least something that I can make use of. Now walking out of the master bedroom into the unnervingly quiet hallway, hearing every wooden board settle under my weight, I go to the closet to the right of the hall and twist the knob, opening the door. I'm met with a veil of darkness. I look up and see a cord coming down from the ceiling, and pulling it gives light to the darkness, revealing something that fills me with unmatched hope. A box of 223 Remington rounds. This has got to be one of the best things that I've seen in a long time. I scan the rest of the closet, and to my surprise, there is no gun of any kind, but I'm not worried. Where there is ammo, there's a gun. Hastily, I grab the ammo box, and once again, I'm disappointed. The box feels very light. I pop open the flap of cardboard on the top, and to my horror, there are only 2 rounds in the box. I yell and throw the box at the wall, the rounds flying out and loudly clinking against the solid wood floor. Right at that moment, I realize my mistake, as I hear a shriek come from outside, followed by those same thumping footsteps. I hear the steps clamber onto the porch, followed by heavy scratching going down the front door. Soon after this, the creature begins slowly walking around the perimeter of the house, going from the door toward the right of the house. Just when it sounds like it's going to pass the area outside in front of me, it stops for a moment. For a second, there is nothing but me in the silence of the hallway, hearing my heart thud against my chest rapidly. and then I hear the wood exterior of the house begin to splinter, the sound starting at ground level, but eventually it goes higher and higher until I hear the roof above me creak heavily, dust and settled cobwebs being knocked loose under the immense weight. It's climbed onto the house. Now paralyzed in fear, I stand in the middle of the hallway, watching the dust falling, getting closer and closer to where I'm standing. It isn't long until it's right above me, and just when I think the situation couldn't possibly get worse, the lights flicker and everything goes dark. This is not good. I need to reset the power box as soon as I can, but there's no way that I'm going out there with this thing literally right above me. Instead, I decided to take a very big risk, albeit still less risky than going outside. I take my phone out of my pocket and I hit the flashlight icon. The rest of the hallway and part of the living room is instantly illuminated by the penetrating light. Before I can make a move, however, I hear a loud thud above me, followed by another and another as I'm showered by falling dust and God knows what else. I don't have time to think before my legs jump into action and I quickly make a mad dash to nowhere in particular, just anywhere away from here. So I scour the floor plan quickly, trying to find a suitable place to hide before this thing is all over me. Fireplace, no. Cabinets, nope. Pantry, yes. Instantly I dash towards the double doors and swing them open and shut myself inside. Now, in oppressive darkness, I can only look through the crack that separates the two doors and listen. Eventually, the slamming on the roof stopped. I guess it was strong enough to hold. But the peaceful silence doesn't last long. I hear a piercing shriek followed by thunderous footsteps going off of the roof, quickly followed by a hard shake as this thing hits ground level again. The pounding footsteps go all the way to the back of the house. For about a minute, I can hear this thing walking around and down the house, trying to find a way in, occasionally scratching and banging on different areas of the house. And for a long moment, there's a pause. No noise and no footsteps and nothing but me, the dark, and my booming heart. But after maybe 30 seconds of the loudest silence of my life, I hear a sound that makes my heart drop. I hear glass shatter. Quickly after this, I hear the unmistakable sound of wood planks splintering and their hollow thuds bouncing off the wooden floor. Given the distance of the sound, I can assume it's somewhere on the other side of the house, maybe the guest bedroom. Regardless, this thing has made its way into the house. There's nothing that I can do now besides sit and pray that it doesn't know where I'm at. After what feels like a lifetime, I hear another noise. It's more wood splintering, but this time it's at the master bedroom door. I peek through the tiny slit in the pantry door and try to see as much as I can, and through the deep darkness I can make out a faint orange glow, accompanied by a deep guttural growl somewhere down the hallway. Not long after, slow heavy footsteps begin making their way closer to the living room. I can hear my heartbeat get heavier than it already was, hearing the boards creak and wail under the weight of whatever this thing was. Still looking through the slit with heavy anticipation, I watch as the faint orange glow gets brighter and brighter until the entire living room is casted in the warm color. It's just when I try to get a better look into the living room when my arm hits something on a shelf, knocking it over and sending it crashing to the ground with a sharp thud. Almost immediately, the orange glow snaps to the kitchen, accompanied by that same deep growl. If I hadn't already given myself away, my heartbeat surely would, as I could feel it pounding against my ribs as loud as a drum. I see the glow get brighter and the thunderous footsteps get so close that I feel the vibration in the floor with each movement this thing made. And eventually, I see it. It's so unlike anything that I've ever seen. Its body was huge, easily towering at 8 feet at the least. It seemed to have fur soaked in tar wrapped around its unusually muscular frame. It walked on all fours, its front, clawed arms much stronger than these smaller and shorter hind legs. Its head was of a worn deer skull adorned with cracked and broken antlers. It's now when I realize where the orange glow was coming from. Looking into its eyes, I see two fiery glowing orbs. Just then, it slowly twists its head to me, the orbs illuminating me through the door. No doubt this thing saw me, but it didn't attack. It just released a deep laugh, turned and left on the same path that it had entered. Once I heard the pounding steps leave into the tree line, I slide down the wall of the pantry and I just sit there, still trying to make sense of everything. Even though I had heard the pounding on the front door, seen the body in the basement, and now even having seen the creature, it was still so hard to believe. None of this was grounded in reality anymore. After a few moments of baffled thought, I finally remembered. The power's out. I needed to go outside and reset the power box before that thing came back, because if it does, I don't think it'll be here to toy with me again. So I managed to bring myself to my feet and exit the pantry. Turning on my flashlight, the vision of the house's kitchen coming quickly into view. I began walking to the back door past the kitchen. Luckily, it had a glass top so that I could look into the backyard for a moment to ensure that I didn't see even the slightest orange glow. After grabbing the doorknob and hesitating for a moment, I throw the door open and begin sprinting across the large, unusually kept lawn. It's hard to tell with just my flashlight, but it seems like there's a large metal box with wiring strewn about, and I'm willing to bet that that's the power box. After making it across the large backyard, I go into the tree line right up to the metal-plated box. For a moment, I don't see anything, just the smooth gray surface of metal. I looked around the box quickly, seeing a blue button on the back of the box that read, "Reset." Instantly, I mashed the button, which causes the box to make a loud pop before humming to life. Across the lawn, I can see the warm orange glow of the house's lights. It's such a relieving sight that I almost didn't notice the pair of orange eyes on the roof, piercing through the night, looking right at me. Instantly, my body locks in place, ice encapsulating every inch of my skin. Though it's nighttime and dark, I can still make out the large, muscular build of this creature. Large heaving exhales exiting in a thin smoke through the nostrils of the deer skull. For what felt like ages, neither of us made a move. I felt like I was staring at this thing for so long that I thought maybe it hadn't seen me. Maybe it was just curious about the noise that the power box made. Maybe I was right, or maybe I had been blessed, but either way, the beast made one last deep growl in my direction before sluggishly disappearing behind the other half of the house's roof, disappearing into the deep, inky night. The moment that I can no longer hear the thunderous footsteps, my legs kick into gear and begin throwing me across the yard to the house. I make it inside, slamming and locking the door behind me in a frantic panic. I have to fix that window, I think to myself. I hated having to go into that basement, but this was survival, and so I did, getting the boards I needed and hastily fixing the window. And as I'm fixing it, I see the smallest amount of light start to peek over the mountaintop, signaling hope and a reprieve. I've made it through the first night. As I'm leaving the guest bedroom after boarding the window up, I turn to close the door behind me, but I see something strange underneath the bed, some kind of cloth. I go towards it and kneel down, pulling a dark green strap, and as I pull my arm back, I'm blessed with the sight of a bolt-action rifle. It's old and dusty, but it seems like it was stable enough to shoot. I spent what little time was left of the night to take apart and clean the weapon as best as I could anyway. When I'm done, I load the 2 rounds into it and push the bolt forward, making it ready to fire. I hadn't noticed, but outside I could hear the faint sounds of birds chirping. Glancing out of the window, I could see faint slits of blue through the wood boards. Hopefully this thing will back off a little with it being daytime now. I take my phone out of my pocket and see that it's 9 in the morning. 1 hour until I can finally sleep safely. Even if it's just a few hours, it's enough to keep me alert. Time seems to go by at a crawling pace. I was mostly hoping this creature wouldn't try some last trick on me before letting me get some shut-eye, and to my surprise, nothing happened. So when 10 o'clock struck, I immediately set an alarm so that I didn't oversleep, and I promptly passed out on the couch. It almost feels like no time passes before a loud crash sends me flying to my feet, chest heaving and my senses clocking into overdrive as I try to gather my surroundings. At first, I see and hear nothing, but my skin feels slightly cold, and the air around me seems cleaner in a way. As my eyes adjust, I can see a faint glow of moonlight casted on a forest of large pine trees. I'm somewhere in the mountains, no doubt, but how? I vividly remember collapsing onto the couch. Just then, something breaks the silence. I hear a sound that I'm very familiar with now. A loud thud shakes the earth beneath my feet as multiple twigs snap just a few yards away. My blood runs cold as I slowly turn around. And sure enough, my gaze meets that same creature that has been haunting me these past few hours, a mere 10 feet away. Its entire body is ink black. That same tar-like substance matting its fur glows under the moonlight, with the only other light being the fiery orange glow of its dead eyes. The beast is staring daggers right through me. A thin mist escapes from under the deer skull with each heaving breath that it makes. And then the creature leaps towards me, its huge arms fully extended outward. And then my eyes fly open, and I'm back in the cabin. For a moment, everything is still. The air is warm, and I can hear a cacophony of birds chirping amongst themselves. Despite the terrifying nature of the dream I just had, I'm surprisingly calm. I flip my phone over and check the time. 11:59. Well, that couldn't have been timed better, I thought to myself, bringing myself to my feet. It wasn't a long sleep by any means. I mean, I'm definitely still tired, but it's manageable. I'll be able to make it to the next break. For a while, nothing happens. I've searched the whole house multiple times over looking for anything else of use, but nothing is uncovered. It feels as though I'm just on a regular vacation sometimes. Nothing happens for 30 minutes to an hour and everything feels normal. I can hear the birds outside, the random call of the mountain animals, even the occasional plane overhead. I can see the morning light shining through the small cracks in between the boards on the windows. It's oddly calming considering the situation. Maybe I'm just happy that it's not night, and one day closer to making it out of this hell. Around 40 more minutes pass with nothing. Deafening silence only broken by the occasional settling of the house that sends me flying to my feet each time. I've noticed that I'm so much more jumpy now, for good reason of course. For so long the silence dragged on. Despite being so on edge, the lack of any stimulation eventually reached me, and I began to feel my eyes grow heavier as time passed. And so I began to pace around the house to make sure that I didn't pass out. I also decided to go into the master bedroom and bathroom to see if there could be anything of use. But despite looking to the best of my ability, I couldn't seem to find anything. I figured even though I've looked already, if I keep searching the rest of the house, I might find something. And so I leave the bathroom and open the door to enter the hallway, where I'm stopped dead in my tracks. Right there at the entrance of the hallway stood the beast, with the corpse from the basement hanging lifeless in its jaws. And right behind it was the bolt-action rifle, my only hope, leaning on the living room couch right where I had left it. How could it have made it inside without making a noise? How did it even get to the corpse? I don't have time to think about the reality of the situation as the beast releases its jaws, dropping the body to the floor with a solid thud. massive tooth marks sunken deep into its rotted flesh. I should have ran, hidden, closed the door, anything, but I just couldn't bring myself to move. I could only sit still and stare at the creature, a mix of blood and saliva dripping from its gaping maw. Finally, fully realizing the horror of the sight in front of me, I snap into action, slamming the door and bolting into the closet to hide in the basement. Maybe I'll be lucky and it won't fit past the trap door. Frantically, I swung into the closet, running to the trap door. I made it to the tiny, dried wood door and tried to swing it open, but it didn't budge. I pulled again, harder this time, but it didn't move an inch. Now the creature is at the room door and I can hear it slam its fist into it as the sound of wood splintering cracks through the air. Now I begin frantically pulling on the door, trying desperately to get it open, but it simply will not budge. A second impact rocks the door. This time I hear it tear off the hinges and crash to the floor. In a desperate panic, I lean back and begin slamming my heel into the door as a last-ditch attempt. And finally, the door pops open. Just as it does, however, the closet is illuminated in the same orange glow that I had seen so many times already. I try to throw myself down into the darkness of the basement, but I'm too late. Just as I leap, I feel the creature's massive hand grab my body tightly and pull me back. Its hand is so massive that it wraps around my entire chest, so tight I can't draw a breath. And as it turns me around, I'm face to face with the beast that is about to kill me. But for a moment, it just holds me there, turning me side to side, examining me, tightening its grip so hard that I feel my ribs begin to cave inward, threatening to snap at any moment. The pain is blinding and I can feel myself about to pass out from the lack of oxygen. And just as the darkness reaches the edges of my eyes, just as I feel my bones giving out from the immense pressure, an epiphany hits me. I remembered so many hours ago that I had put a knife into my shoe. With limited time and my life on the line, I lift my leg up and grab the knife out from my shoe, holding it high in the air above the beast. I see it tilt its head upwards, seeing what I'm doing. Before it can do anything, I plunge the knife deep into its right eye. The creature lets out a shrill shriek and drops me to the ground, its hand clawing at the knife, still plunged, handle deep into its socket. The beast looks up to me, still on the ground, ears ringing, trying to catch my breath. It releases a roar that resonates pure hate. Just then, its eye releases a bright flash before a hard shockwave sends me flying back, directly into the basement. The first thing I feel is an intense pulsating pain in my head. I can feel a cold sensation on my body and something wet on my face. I move my arms to pick myself up and I feel a cold, smooth surface that feels like it has a layer of either dirt or dust. As my senses begin slowly coming back to me, I notice that I'm surrounded by darkness. And I would assume it was silent because the ringing in my ears makes it hard to tell. For a moment, I can't make sense of anything. With the intense head pain and ringing ears, my mind is too clouded to think clearly. It's then that I begin looking around where I'm at, stumbling and trying to keep from falling over as it feels like my head is spinning. At first, it's the same darkness in all directions, but I eventually see a small light. Focusing my eyes, I can tell it's a small doorway with a warm yellow light flooding through the darkness. Looking down at my feet, I can see a puddle of what seems to be water, but upon closer inspection, I can notice a slight red hue to it. To confirm my suspicions, I lift my hand to the back of my head and sure enough, I feel a warm and slimy sensation. And when I pull my hand back, it's covered in blood. Just then, all the dots "That can't be the number. It just can't," Wes said, taking off his faded John Deere hat and slapping it against his leg. I dried the corn before I hauled it over. I know what the moisture level is. Wes, I'm just the messenger. The machine checks in, gives me back a level. Well, your gosh darn machine must be broken. It's just recently been recalibrated. I can run another sample if you want. Wes sighed. Years worth of anxiety exhaled in a moment. Y'all know how tough it's been for us. You dock off 10 cents a bushel and it barely is enough to cover costs. If you want to try the Grainco elevator, they might give you a better level. They're still using an older moisture system and might not dock as much. Wes shook his head. Cost of the gas driving to a new location will eat into the margins, Wes said, putting the cap back on. You people are the reason the family farms are dying. I'm just a lowly nighttime agent at a grain elevator. People above my pay grade set the prices, Wes. I run the machine. Wish that I had a say in this, I really do. The aging farmer paced, mumbling to himself as he did, trying to shake loose the anger from his body. His snit was moderate compared to others. One guy took a swing at me. Truth was, they all were right. The moisture limits were off, and the big ag company I worked for wanted to maximize profits by shortchanging farmers. Every night I stared into the eyes of broken men and gave them bad news. It ate at my soul. I was a force multiplier for misery. Oh, Jesus Christ and his crown of thorns, Wes finally said. Just take the corn. I'll figure something out. I'm sorry, Wes, truly. He waved me off. I don't want to hear it. Just take it. I'll be in my truck. He slammed the door as he left. It rattled the windows and knocked small knickknacks off my desk. As soon as he stormed off, my boss's office door squeaked open. He gone? He asked from the safety of his office. Yep. The door opened wide, and Larry, my fastidious boss, walked out laughing. Oh, thank God he left. He seemed heated. The faint smell of whiskey followed Larry's arrival. Larry took nips from a flask all the time and assumed that he was getting away with it. Larry was wrong. A common occurrence around here. He is heated, and he isn't alone. I've heard it all night. They'll learn to love the new rates, Larry said, staring through the blinds, or their corn will rot. Blood whooshed in my ears and I grit my teeth. My tongue was begging to give out a lashing, but I held it firm. There wasn't a ton of decent paying gigs in this town anymore, and I needed a place where I could study in peace. The night shift at the grain elevator was the perfect spot for me. Speaking of rot, around near Silo 10 I caught a funky, musty smell earlier. When you get a chance, go check it out. No sensor warnings, and I didn't feel any heat. It's still worth a glance, though. I can't have a fire now. Margins are tighter than a honey hole. A disgusting metaphor aside, he wasn't wrong. The price changes had wrecked everybody down the line, save the big ag companies. I glanced out at Wes, muttering to himself outside. Should we try to smooth things over? Larry, still lingering at the window, shook his head. No, I'm not going down there, he said, turning to me. But it might not hurt for you to smooth things over. We can't have everybody run into the Grainco elevator. What should I tell him? I don't know, the rates are temporary. We understand his frustration. Things will get back to normal soon, stuff like that. Are the rates temporary? Larry laughed. When have you ever heard of a company cutting into its profits on purpose? You want me to lie? Don't be such a Boy Scout, Larry said, walking away from the window and grabbing the latest issue of Farm Worker magazine. I gotta take the Browns to the Super Bowl. It's about to smell musty in here, and it ain't gonna have nothing to do with wet corn, he said, cracking himself up. Go on and get. I'll be a minute. He left for the bathroom, and I sighed. Wes might sock me in the jaw, but whatever stench Larry was about to release in the bathroom would be worse. A bruised jaw was worth the risk. I zipped up my hoodie as soon as I got outside. Since fall had tiptoed closer, the nights at the complex had gone from pleasant to, I don't really want to go out if I don't have to. My breath was visible and the cold stung my nose and the tips of my ears. The wind rustled through the fabric, sending shivers up my spine. I stuffed my hands into my pockets and I made my way over to Wes. He had parked his rig over the dump gate and was in the process of opening the bottom hatch of his truck. Once he caught me heading toward him, he stopped. The cold had helped to extinguish his fury. The man was more apologetic than mad. "I hate the winter," I said as a way of greeting. Same. My hands get so chapped that they bleed, even with gloves on. I envy the bears who get to hibernate through this shit." Wes smiled and his shoulders dropped. His eyes went to the ground, letting his thoughts gather steam, before bringing them level with me. "Oh, sorry about in there." I held up my hands. "Don't, I get it. So many farmers have goddamned me lately that I'm starting to wonder if the big man has agreed to help. A lot of God-fearing folks forget the Lord don't like his name taken in vain." "Amen," I said. "I get why, but I'm just a dude that pushes a button. Forces larger than me are calling all the shots." Wes nodded. "I can't imagine it's easy. There are worse fates, but I hate disappointing folks. Be straight with me. Why did they raise the moisture level barrier?" I shrugged. "Money?" Wes spat. "I can't wring blood from a gosh darn stone. They're gonna squeeze, though. Squeeze too hard and you break the rock." "You're right." "I should have sold the farm last year," Wes said, resigned. "I offered more than what it was worth. Told my pappy about the offer, and the man damn near shed a tear at the thought of us moving on. That man lost a finger and his eyes didn't even well up once." "How's he been?" Wes waggled his hand. Has good days and bad, but it's all on a downhill slope. It's spread to his lungs, and just a matter of time now." "Sorry about that," I said, patting his shoulder. "I lost my dad 2 years ago, and I still feel the hurt." Wes nodded thanks and turned away. He wiped away a tear, but I wasn't going to call it out. We all need to grieve. "You want me to fire it up?" "Yes, sir," he said over his shoulder. He unlatched the bottom hatch of his truck and the flow of thousands of corn kernels filled the night air. A grain elevator is exactly what it sounds like. Farmers park their trucks over a grate, let the seeds fall into a pit where a belt with little platforms drags the corn up to the top of a silo. Our elevator has 16 silos on site, and come harvest season, they'll all fill up. That's when the money comes in. It's also when things get dangerous. You wouldn't think that grain storage is a high-risk job, and mostly you'd be right. But dust stalks the silos. Falling from heights is frequent enough. Sometimes the air is putrid from unseen decaying matter. And worse, fine dust and built-up gases ignite and explode. About a year ago, 2 towns over, a silo exploded. Stuffed with hardened kernels, it was like an industrial-level pipe bomb. Killed a guy. "You hear about that farmhand at the Braverman farm?" Wes had asked. "No, what happened?" The belt below us squeaked. If you closed your eyes, the corn movers sounded like a rain stick. It could be pleasant. Less so if you hear it settle from inside a silo. If you're close enough to hear millions of kernels slide around, it'll be the last thing that you hear. "Oh, he was breaking up a crust and he slipped inside. He was dead before the paramedics got there," Wes said, crossing himself. "He wasn't wearing his harness either." 5 seconds to get trapped. 30 to die, Wes said. I don't even think it took that long. Moisture is the enemy in the bins. The corn can clump together and crust over a void. You step on that and you tumble down. Millions of kernels collapse. The weight crushes you into a pancake. You go in the grain and odds are you don't come out. I don't know about you, but $16 an hour with no benefits ain't worth being crushed to death by corn kernels. Braverman always cuts corners, I said. Can't say I'm shocked. Costly mistake. The family's gonna sue, surprised if Braverman doesn't just sell the land and call it a day. And Granco's been sniffing around anyhow. I offered Wes a cigarette and he took it. We moved away from the clanking elevator to talk in a quieter place. Ducked behind the office and lit up like we were two high school kids hiding from our parents. You're in school, right? Yes, sir, trying to finish off my business degree. You want to work in agriculture? I want to stay as far away from ag as possible, I said, taking a drag. I'd like to get out of this area altogether, if I can help it. Is your mama gonna miss you? Nah, she's living her life. Bingo almost every night with friends. I went once and she didn't hit. Called me a cooler and said that I couldn't come back. Wes laughed. That's a blunt assessment. That's mama. The woman doesn't let a topic pass without speaking her piece on it. Off in the distance, someone slammed a stick against the side of a silo. The reverberations echoed in the dark. Wes and I looked at one another to confirm that we had both heard the same thing. What the hell was that? Probably teens messing around. Ain't much to do around here except drink and raise a little cane. And Grant Platt told me the other night that somebody came and put up about half a dozen scarecrows in his fields. Noticed them that evening, but when he went to get them in the morning, they were gone. I took a drag off my smoke and tried to hide my concern. Truth was, the last few weeks, I'd been hearing noises around the complex. Shuffling, banging, whispers. The noises were odd, sure, but nothing to call a preacher about. What was curious, though, was where they were coming from. The rows of silos. Everywhere, too. Near the base, at the top, along the sides. Banging against the walls like somebody was trapped inside. Industrial complexes are rife with odd sights and sounds, but something about these didn't sit right with me. I mentioned it to Larry the other day, but he wasn't too concerned. Told me that it was the corn settling in the silos. I didn't buy it, but since I had zero desire to go inside and investigate, I let it go. Silo 10 was the epicenter. I asked my boy about the scarecrow thing and he mentioned it being some social media trend. He said, shaking his head in disgust. A way to scare people and record their reactions. Sounds mean to me, but the whole darn world seems to be trending that way these days. I heard the sound again. Someone dragged a stick against the metal ribbing at the bottom of the silos. Reminded me of a machine gun firing or a baseball card jammed in your bike spokes. I took another drag of my smoke and my hand twitched. Gotta be kids, I said, dropping my cigarette and crushing it under my boot. Let's put the fear of God into 'em. Wes nodded. When in doubt, turn to the good book. We headed toward the silos, moving fast and as quietly as boots on gravel could be. Whispering voices found our ears. Teens. When we got to the silo where they were hiding, I wrapped my hand against it. The dull thud echoed around us. A few people tried to suppress their laughter. It was coming from the next silo over. It was kids messing around. Though a weight had lifted off my shoulders, smoldering anger replaced the void. I had enough shit to deal with, and I didn't need to add running off clout-chasing teens to my list. I motioned for Wes to go around the silo counterclockwise and sneak up on them from behind. Let the man surprise them and give them a taste of their own medicine. I would go the opposite direction and hopefully catch them. If they ran well, I was gonna let them run. I don't get paid to chase people down. The kids shushed each other and dragged that stick against these silos' ribs again. This time they went slowly, the deadened ringing like a cracked church bell. I waited until they stopped and then took off, hoping to catch them in the act. As I rounded the corner, I came skidding to a stop on the gravel. A poorly made scarecrow loomed over me. He hung loosely from a stake and barely driven into the hardened ground. Even though I expected a scarecrow around the corner, the sight still surprised me. "Oh shit, look at his face," one of the teen boys said from the shadows. "He's scared as hell." Peals of laughter from about 4 boys and girls standing in the dark of Silo 11. "This is private property. You can't be back here." "Oh, relax, bro. It was a dumb prank," a guy said, walking into the dim moonlight. He was wearing a Letterman jacket with so many patches that you would think that he had served in the military, not the track team. "Oh, it's just for fun," a girl said, not brave enough to walk into the light. "We didn't mean nothing by it." The large fellow walked up next to his friend, big all over with a head the size of a backpack. He laughed, raspy and halting like a man straining to breathe, and he waved his hand in front of his face. "How do you work here, bro? These silos smell like 10 kinds of ass." "Maybe he likes the smell of ass," the Letterman said, pointing and laughing. They all chuckled and blood rushed to my cheeks. "You're trying to get this man in trouble with his boss," Wes said, stepping out of the shadows. They jumped worse than I had. A little revenge isn't so bad. Ain't justice, just revenge flipped upside down. "Jesus Christ," the kid said. "Watch your mouth, Dennis Temple," Wes said, his deepened dad voice coming out. "Oh yeah, I know who you are, who all of you are." He turned his attention back to Dennis. "I know your pa didn't raise you to blaspheme the Lord's name or curse out at strangers now, did he?" "No sir, he didn't," Dennis said, his eyes on the ground. "How many of y'all are there?" After a few seconds, 2 girls in matching red hoodies walked out. Wes shook his head. "I can't imagine none of y'all's parents would think highly of you bothering a working man just trying to earn his daily bread," Wes said, pulling the scarecrow out of the ground and handing it over. "Think your pa would be happy with somebody screwing with him at the mill?" "No, sir." "Apologize to this man, erase that video, and get on back home." And Dennis in his gaggle turned to me and mumbled apologies, and then he erased the video, holding up his phone to prove that he did. Once Wes was happy with the responses, he softened. "Now there ain't nothing wrong with having fun, just not at someone else's expense. We were young once and we did our fair share of rabble-rousing. Just don't do it at some innocent man's expense. Y'all understand?" "Yes, sir," Dennis said. He turned to me. "Sorry, man, I meant nothing by it." I softened. "I just don't want to see anybody get hurt. This is a dangerous place." Our alarm system squawking drowned my voice out. Red lights started blinking on top of the silos. We both glanced up and a sinking sensation rumbled in my stomach. I turned to the now genuinely nervous teens and shooed them away. They didn't hesitate. Wes craned his head up to the lights. "What's that mean?" Honestly, I've never heard them go off. In the distance, the office door slammed open, Larry's booming voice calling out. I turned to Wes. "I don't think he's in a good mood. The devil has more good times than old Larry." We started back for the office. As soon as we came out of the line of silos, Larry pointed his folded magazine at me. "Where the hell were you?" "Chasing off a few kids that had snuck onto the property. Why are the alarms going off? Something wrong with the elevator." "It's what alarms usually mean, don't it? And you say you're in college, huh?" Larry said, shaking his head. "Useless as teats on a boar hog." "I've never seen them go off before is all," I said, swallowing my anger. Don't sweat it, son," Wes said, patting me on the back and nodding at Larry. "Larry never even finished high school, and look where he is." I chuckled and Larry fumed. The friendly joke got under his skin. Wes was needling and found a vein. It was Larry's turn to strike. "If your wet corn broke my machine, repairs are going to come out of your pocket," Larry said, attempting a joke. It Hindenburged and we walked to the elevator in silence. Once there, it was obvious that something had jammed up the works because the belts weren't moving anymore. Wes's corn had emptied from his truck and was now all in the underground storage pit. A rock or something scooped up from the harvest might have found its way into the elevator and got stuck. I'll shut down the power, climb into the pit to get a look. If there's a jam, it's gotta be in there, Larry said. He handed me a flashlight and nodded down at the pit access hatch. I can't wait, I said, taking the flashlight. There was a ping as my feet hit each rung. There's no light down here because there isn't any need. The corn falls and the elevator belts scoop it up. Kernels don't need to see the elevator to catch it. They just get swept away. I had only come down here a few times and that was more than enough. The ground slopes toward the belt, so once you get off the ladder, you have to crab walk to stay stable. If there was a clog, it was probably where the belt goes vertical, delivering the kernels up to another conveyor belt where they ride until they're dumped into a silo. Those turns on the conveyor belts are notorious for clogs and are hard to fix without the proper tools. Operators and agents can try to dig out the clogs, but it doesn't go well. Repairmen call them finger strippers for a reason. I hit the bottom rung and my feet slid out from under me as I stepped down to the cement floor. I shone the light at the elevator. There wasn't much corn left, but there was still enough that it piled near the belt. I scanned my light along the bottom of the ramp, looking for any obstruction. "What's the holdup?" Larry yelled down, his dumb voice echoing in the pit. "So far so good," I yelled back. "Gonna get a closer look at the belts." Don't go too close, I don't want OSHA in our business." I rolled my eyes and took another step down the steep slope. My foot skidded in some loose dirt, but I caught myself before I face-planted. I chuckled at my luck inside. Screw this whole freaking complex. As I dragged the light across the backside of the elevator, something dull and gray came into view. It was enough to get me closer. Inching along, I finally reached the belt and placed a hand on it for stability. What in the world is that? In the pit's dark, I spied a split-open gray watermelon half buried in corn kernels. It must have been there for a while because the smell of rot grew with each inch that I got closer. I tucked my nose into my shirt. "There's something weird down here," I yelled up. "Yeah, you," Larry said, laughing to himself. I ignored him and shifted my light to the right. A blackened, twisted vine snaked out from the watermelon. A seed germinating down here wasn't impossible, but to grow to this size. I followed the vine until it ended at a pile of clothes. I was about to reach over and grab them when the flashlight beam bounced off a pair of coal black eyes. Oh shit. My fingers loosened and I dropped the flashlight, shutting it off. I scrambled back up the incline, but my foot caught on some loose kernels, and I fell face first into the concrete. My teeth caught against my tongue and my mouth filled with the coppery tang of blood. My smashed nose stung, and the gushing painted my lips and chin crimson. I had a hard time breathing without my nostrils whistling like a bored kid in church. Shaking off my growing ailments, I scrambled up the ladder, burst out of the top, and rolled away from the hole. I was breathing like I had run a marathon, pitched forward with my hands on my knees. Blood from my nose was pooling on the dirt in front of me. "What the hell is wrong?" Larry asked. "What happened?" "There's something down there." "What?" "I saw eyes." "You sure it's not a raccoon? We got raccoons down there all the time. Hate those thieving things." "I know what a raccoon looks like," I snapped, pinching the bridge of my nose to staunch the bleeding. It did little, but I convinced myself that it was working. "There was a watermelon and something." "Did you leave my flashlight down there?"
"Larry, some grace, please," Wes said, his tone scolding.
What? This boy couldn't organize a hen raffle at a poultry farm. The hell does that mean? I snapped. A stern glower from my boss recalibrated my emotions. Sorry, I'm hurting is all. You okay, kid? Wes asked. No, but I'll live, I said, touching my nostril to see if there was fresh blood still flowing. Sorry I dropped your flashlight, but I didn't want to get stabbed. What, did you see a weapon? Larry asked. I shook my head no. Then what are you worried about, son? I was startled it happened so fast. Startled is a fancy word for scared. Fine, I was scared, Larry. You wouldn't be. Larry's scared of missing a meal, but that's about it, Wes said with a grin. Before Larry could shoot back, Wes held up his hands and gave him an affable grin. Oh, just funnin', big guy. Kid, let me take a gander, huh? Wes walked over to the hole, pulled out his phone, and stuck his head down. The light wasn't as strong, but it did the work because he caught the eyes staring out at him too. Well, I'll be pickled, he mumbled. Hey, what are you doing down there? No response was forthcoming. Without hesitating, Wes climbed down into the pit. Hey, you can't go down there, it's a liability thing, Larry yelled to no avail. Seconds later, belly laughs came rousing up. What's so funny? Larry yelled down. There's a clown in there. Oh, there is someone down here, all right. I'll bring him up. I inched closer. My mouth went arid, the moisture sliding to my clammy palms. Finally, Wes came up, trailing someone behind him. As he breached the hole, he yanked up a scarecrow with him. He tossed it on the ground between Larry and me. Here's your culprit. Oh, hell's bells, kid. You were afraid of a scarecrow, Larry said in between guffaws. I didn't know it was a scarecrow. You didn't even investigate. Even the crows check out scarecrows. How you gonna make it in the city if you can't handle a straw man? Why was it down there? I turned to Wes. Was it in your truck and fell through? No way. Those kids, maybe. When would they get down there? Well, heck, I don't know. This scarecrow was different from the one that the kids had brought. Theirs was obviously handmade and not very well. Super understuffed with hay. Visible safety pins held the pants to the shirt, to the pillowcase head. Someone crudely drew on the face, made a real mess with the eyes and mouth. This one wasn't that. Outside the mangling that it had taken in the elevator belts, it was pristine. The outfit was a pair of old blue jeans and a gingham shirt with no visible pins. The clothes were so evenly stuffed with hay that they resembled a real person's body, muscles and everything. The head was an old burlap sack with black buttons sewn on for eyes and cinched with an ancient length of weather-beaten rope. A jack-o'-lantern's shark-tooth grin stitched in with white thread. Something that you would show off at the county fair, not drop in a grain elevator pit where nobody would see it. Oh, whatever it is, it's out now. I'm restarting the machine and finishing this up, Larry said as he turned to head back into the office. But then he froze. He shot his hand up and pointed to the top of a silo. Is that a person up there? Wes and I followed his finger to the top of Silo 10. The only light up there was the blinking red alarm, but it was enough to outline a person. They weren't moving, just sitting, shoeless feet dangling, and holding on to the light structure. What in tarnation? Ah, Jesus, if they fall, we're screwed, Larry said in a panic. Hey, what the hell are you doing? Get down now. The figure leaned back, their hands letting go, and they tipped off the top of the silo. Oh shit, Larry said, sprinting. He got there first and came skidding to a stop, sending gravel skipping down the path. I tried to read his face. Was he looking at a horror show? But his dropped jaw and raised eyebrows weren't sending that message. The hell? Wes and I joined him at his side, and the same wave of confusion caught us in its wake. I shook my head, hoping to get my synapses firing correctly. but nothing changed. We were staring at the body of another scarecrow. Wes crossed himself. "And this ain't natural. Nothing tonight has been." I didn't bother with the divine. I was stuck on the logistics of how a person got onto the silo roof in the first place. We kept the silo ladders latched closed, and they still were. But even if the ladders had been unlatched, climbing on top of the silo was super dangerous in the best of conditions. Hauling up a scarecrow while trying to climb up would be damn near impossible. "Who brought it up there? How?" I said, meaning for it to remain in my mind, but the thought couldn't help but escape into the wider world. Larry's face went from disbelief to anger. "Oh, someone's messing with us and I don't like it one bit." He turned to me. "Where did those kids go? Did you know their names?" "They left right after we confronted them. I saw them leave." "I know them well enough to know that this ain't them," Wes said. "I don't know what this is, but I know that I don't like it, and I'd like to finish my business and be on my way." "Sure," Larry said, his rage cooling into simmering anger. "I'll take care of ya. Kid, add this guy to the pile and burn them both. I don't want to hear anything more about scarecrows." The two of them left. I walked to the straw man. The fall had done some damage and an arm had fallen off on impact, but otherwise it was fine. I kicked it to ensure that it wasn't alive or anything. It wasn't, thank God. "Hey, considering the fall should have killed you, you look okay." Off in the distance, the grain elevator started back up and I damn near jumped out of my skin. I turned back toward the office. Wes and Larry were standing near the truck scale and arguing over the price changes. The conversation was heated enough that a few spicy words were louder than the elevator's hum. "Larry, man, read the room." I turned back to the scarecrow. Chills prickled down my spine. I didn't like this thing, and the urge to kill it and its pal with fire grew like corn in the summer. "Alright, dude, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here." And grabbing his hay-stuffed shirt sleeve, I had dragged his body about 2 feet when the scarecrow let out a faint, painful groan. I dropped the arm. It bounced off the ground, lifeless. Still, I shuffled a few steps back, my eyes never leaving the body. What the hell was that? There was thunking again. I snapped my head toward the silo. Opposite me, somebody dragged a stick slowly against the ribs. I wanted to believe the kids had come back around for another attempt at the video, but my rapidly beating heart told me that that wasn't the case. Wes had laid into them pretty good, and like all teens, they feared getting in trouble. The hair on the back of my neck was at attention. Despite the cool evening, sweat rolled down my nose. I wiped my face with my already sweaty palms and dried them against my dusty pants. My spiking adrenaline made my body tremble. Run or fight. I closed my eyes and let my instincts choose for me. Instead of running off, something that my legs were screaming at my brain to do, I slapped the side of the silo myself. It wasn't as loud or intimidating, but it sent the message that I was still here, damn it. They wouldn't scare me off so easily. Pressing my body against the silo, the metal was warmer than normal. I still needed to check the internal temperature, but dealing with a scarecrow-apalooza was my top problem at the moment. I quietly slid along the metal. My goal was to surprise whoever was there. What I would do after that wasn't exactly clear to me yet. One problem at a time. I took baby steps, careful to not crunch on the gravel. The vibrations through the metal rippled through my body. I was sure that I was about to run into the person. I stilled and gathered my courage and ran toward my unseen foe, screaming bloody murder. The scarecrow's detached arm fell to the ground as I came around the corner. I froze, my brain failing to put together what I had just witnessed. How was the arm moving? Straw feet kicked up gravel as the rest of the body ran away. I circled the silo just in time to catch the hayman turning off the gravel path and disappearing into the shadows. With my wits reaching their natural end, I pulled myself together and did the only sensible thing. I ran. I moved like this thing was chasing me. I hadn't run this fast in years and my body rejected the effort. Joints ached and my lungs burned, but I wasn't stopping until I got back to the office. I got there just as Wes was taking the check from Larry. They stared at me like I had two heads. Larry shook his head and asked, "Oh, what's going on? Where's the scarecrow?" "It ran off," I said between gulps of air. "It ran away." "Well, that's my cue to get along. Y'all have a night," Wes said, quickly hopping into his truck and firing it up. Larry shook his head. "He's already mad about the raids. We can't afford to scare him off with stories of running scarecrows loose in the facility." "It's not a story, I saw it," I said. "And frankly, right now, I don't give a shit about scaring off clients. I just saw a scarecrow." A rock came screaming in from the darkness and slammed into Larry's elbow. It landed with a slap. He screamed, dropped the pen that he was holding, and cradled his arm. A welt grew, his skin reddening from the blow. "What the hell was that?" "Let me see your flashlight," I said, taking it from him. I shone the light over to where we had left the first scarecrow. It was gone. Larry, the man who never shut up, was stunned into silence. His mouth opened, but the words died on his tongue. Sweat stains grew from the armpits of his shirt, and his eyes darted back and forth near the elevator. His whole body trembled. He absent-mindedly rubbed his growing welt. I'm gonna head inside," he said, turning his attention away from the elevator to the office. "I got some paperwork too." He never reached the door. The scarecrow that Wes had freed from the pit was standing in front of it, staring at us. The elevator belt had mangled its shirt, tearing it open and exposing bloody hay inside. It didn't move, but I swear it was breathing. "How?" was all that Larry got out. Distracted as we were, another rock came crashing in and caught Larry on the shoulder. It was larger than the last, and the blow made him stumble and turn toward the thrower. Before he responded, another stone smashed Larry in the cheek. It split his skin open and blood spurted from the wound. Larry slapped his hand on the cut, blood seeping through the cracks of his fingers, and stumbled away. His eyes rolled back into his head and he crashed to the ground. Before I could help him, another projectile flew in and hit him square in the temple. A noise like a ripe melon popping open. Any consciousness that he was clinging to fell away, and his rotund body dropped like a dying ox. Blood from his head wounds pooled around his face. I shone the flashlight into the dark, and another scarecrow was standing there. At first blush, it resembled the other two, but then my eyes clued in on something that caused me to choke back vomit. The burlap bag and rope on this scarecrow's body were still wet with fresh blood. It dripped down and stained the front of the Letterman jacket that it was wearing. It was Dennis Temple, or at least a body that had been Dennis Temple. Did you kill the kid?" The scarecrow started laughing. A deep, back-of-the-throat laugh that was muffled through the blood-soaked hay. It reached behind his back and softly tossed something toward my feet. The mystery item rolled along the dirt and gravel until it came to a stop at my boot. It was a human heart. The scarecrow clapped its hands together and 3 more scarecrows emerged from the shadows around the elevator and office. 2 smaller ones dressed in red hoodies flanked a big fella. With the same disdain, they rolled their hearts to my feet as well. My mind raced for a way out of this mess. I patted my pants for my keys, but they weren't on me. I had left them in the office, which was being guarded by a sinister scarecrow. To think, I once thought this job would be less stressful than working at the town's Taco Bell. The letterman picked up another rock and hurled it at me. Unlike Larry, I dodged it, but I wouldn't be able to dodge everything. I glanced at Larry's unmoving body. The guy was an ass, but he didn't deserve this. I wasn't sure if he was dead or not, but I didn't want to be. I turned on my heels and booked it toward the entrance to the elevator complex. Despite my plans not to do so, I glanced back. The scarecrows had gathered around his body and were laying their hands on him. In between my footfalls on the gravel and my labored breasts, they began ripping his skin away in strips. That tearing and Larry's screams filled the night sky. When he finally went quiet, it was clear what had happened. They had turned him into a scarecrow. As the gate to the complex came into view, a pair of yellow truck headlights appeared and flew toward me. They burst through the gate arm, splintering the wood and sending it tumbling end over end. The truck wasn't slowing, but the driver lay on the horn. I jumped out of the way right before it would have turned me into a grease spot. As it zoomed past, I smiled. Wes had come back. The chasing scarecrow stopped, momentarily confused, and that slight hesitation cost them. Wes slammed into them, sending the straw men scattering into the wind. The truck came to a skidding stop just outside the office building. Wes hopped out and yelled for me to give him a hand. I didn't hesitate. I ran back as fast as my feet would fly. Wes dropped the tailgate, and he was pulling out 2 propane tanks as I caught up with them. In between my gasping breaths, Wes attached a length of orange hose to the nozzle of each tank. The hose connected to a water pressure gun, or so I thought. Wes pulled the trigger and a bright burst of orange flame roared out of the tip. "Weed burners," he said, handing me a propane tank. "Saves the pain of weeding my family plot by hand. I figured it would cook these devils up and send them back to the 7th circle of Hades." "Hell yes," I said, firing a small flame. "Why'd you come back?" "You've always been square by me, and it didn't feel mighty Christian of me to leave a good man in a lurch. How'd I be able to ask the Lord and Savior for help if I'd tucked tail and ran when one of his flock needed me?" he said with a smile. "Now let's toast some ghouls." I laughed. What in the childhood dream was this? We clinked the tips of our guns together and fanned out. Besides the original 2, there were the 4 teens and Larry. I didn't see his body among the others, but I figured he was around here somewhere. Wes walked up to the armless scarecrow who had been partially de-stuffed from the impact with the truck. With no hesitation, he pressed the trigger and burned the scarecrow to embers. As the flame ate away at the burlap bag, the monster let loose a painful yell. A white ball of light burst from the ashes and rose into the night sky, a dandelion spore catching a ride in the breeze. Before too long, it was just another white dot in a sky full of them. Wes moved on to the next victim. I came across Dennis Temple first. The accident had shorn his legs from the rest of his body. The top half was crawling along to where they had landed. Before it reconstituted itself, I aimed my gun down, sighted its burlap head, and blasted it with flames. It screamed and I grinned as the hay caught fire, curled, and burned to ash. Another white ball shot up into the sky. I moved on. Wes's demolition derby had done the lion's share of the work. These things had been stunned, and now we were just mopping up. Each time we came upon a pile of hay, we blasted it with fire until it didn't exist anymore. Within 10 minutes, every visible scarecrow had become a pile of ash that drifted in the breeze. I finally let go of the trigger. The propane tank was lighter than it had been. I pulled the trigger again and no flame came leaping out. I turned to Wes. I went a little crazy. It's hard not to. Our burning spree had brought us back around by the grain elevator. The hatch was barely visible under the gravel and kernels that had been kicked up in the fighting. Wes placed his propane tank down and wiped his sweaty brow. Is that all of them? Larry, I said. I didn't see Larry. Is he? I nodded. Wes made a sign of the cross. He was an idiot most of the time, but even idiots shouldn't go out like that. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. Yeah, was all that I added. We should find him or whatever he is now. If we don't, we'll find new people to, in fact, change. What even are these things and where did they come from? Hell, Wes said. They came from. He never finished the sentence. The hatch opened under him and he fell into the grain elevator pit. He let out a painful yelp as the propane tank clanged against his body. The elevator started up and Wes hollered and scrabbled away from the quickly moving belts. I trailed off. Out of the corner of my eye, a familiar figure was standing near the hatch controls. Larry, or what used to be Larry. He was one of them now. He turned his bloodied, burlap head toward me and nodded. Oh damn, I said as Larry took his first lumbering step toward me. I tried lighting up my propane torch again, but it was empty. Oh, come on, I tried again, and nothing happened. Larry's first few steps reminded me of a baby deer just figuring out how to walk, but it didn't stay that way. Bambi eventually found his footing and started running at me. I dropped the propane tank and booked it in the opposite direction. Larry followed. I didn't have a clue where to go. I couldn't just run away. Plus, I didn't want to abandon Wes down in the pit. The man had come riding to the rescue in his pickup. What kind of man would I be if I left him in there? Letting Larry get turned made my guts tighten. A guilt I was sure would grow with every day that I was on this side of the soil, but I couldn't change it now. The musky smell of overly wet corn caught my attention. I was near Silo 10. A divine spark set off a raging fire in my brain. I might not be able to outrun this thing, but I could trap it. I darted off through the row of grain bins until I got to a supply shed. Thankfully, Larry was lazy and never locked these. I ripped open the doors and flipped on the overhead light. On the shelf was what I had come for, a safety harness and a guide wire. I slipped on the harness and wrapped the wire coil around my arm. Before I darted back out, I grabbed a ventilator mask and put that on as well. I exited the shed and clocked Larry, now full on running. Bits of hay falling off his body with each long stride. I took off at a full sprint myself, heading for Silo 10. I kicked at the ladder latch until it came free, sending it sliding down. As soon as it hit, I hooked on one end of the guide wire to the base of the silo and the other to my harness. With the carabiner's click, I started up the ladder. I was 5 rungs up when Larry's hay hand grabbed my boot and yanked me down. I swung my free leg at him, but Straw Larry was more nimble than Human Larry had ever been. With a strength that shocked me, he caught a hold of my legs and yanked down with all his might. The tips of my fingers slipped off the rounded rung and I went crashing to the ground. The straw man helped break my fall, but it was still far enough to force all the air from my lungs. I rolled onto my stomach and away from Larry's windmilling arms. I coughed and finally caught my breath in the middle of the roll. Right after my first breath, Larry's foot found my stomach. Pain rippled through my body and I vomited. Another swift blow to my ribs caused one of them to crack, constricting my muscles around my chest. I rolled away again, but the guide wire worked like a leash at this point. I wouldn't be able to run with it still attached. Even though this wasn't my former boss, I recalled every time that he had pissed me off and let that anger strengthen me. I scrambled back up to my feet and turned to the scarecrow. He ran at me again, growling and snarling. I yanked hard on the wire, pulling it taut, and ran at Larry. The wire clotheslined him, sending him sprawling to the ground. I had hoped it would slice him in half, but knocking him down gave me enough time to make it back to the ladder and scramble up. Larry grabbed the first rung as I reached the top. I slid the ventilator over my face, unlocked the escape hatch, and threw it open. Instantly, a wave of noxious gas hit me. The silo being warm against my back earlier made sense. Something nasty and dangerous was brewing in here among the millions of kernels. Muttering a quick prayer, I climbed into the hatch and found the top rung inside the silo. This bin was almost full, so the trip down into the kernels was short. I gingerly placed a foot on the corn, and it shifted under my weight. I placed my other foot down, and despite some more shifting, I stayed level. A shadow fell over me. Larry had arrived. I wasn't sure if these things had rational thoughts, but I swear I could see the wheels turning inside its stupid burlap head. Come on down here. You come down here and you can get me. Just a tasty treat waiting for you. It stood there unmoving, unblinking, waiting. I wanted it to get in here already. Even with the mask, the gas buildup in here was intense. My eyes started watering. Larry found the wire next to his hand and picked it up. With a strength that no being made of hay should have, he yanked on the wire and pulled me toward the hatch. Sensing a wind, Larry wrapped the guide wire around his arm and started pulling me up. My body ascended and I squirmed around to stop it. I tried rocking my weight backward, hoping to tip Larry over, but he held firm. Everything that I tried to do to stop him had failed. I was getting closer to being within his arm's grasp. From the tips of his stray fingers, tiny razor-sharp thresher blade tips emerged like a cat's claws. They twitched in anticipation of the soft skin they would rip into. The idea of those blades slicing off my face focused my brain. I had to free myself. It was now or never. The loose corn ground against my boots. A kernel caught the side and shot out, ricocheting around the silo. As it bounced around, my thoughts followed suit. I glanced back. A thin layer of clumped corn kernels spread across the middle of the silo. I smiled. Come on, big fella, pull me up. I screamed and relaxed my body. Larry kept yanking the wire, slowly bringing me up to the hatch opening. The tip of my boot found the first rung of the internal silo ladder, and I braced both of my feet on it. I let him pull me within a few inches of his grasp, the whole time keeping my legs cocked and ready to fire. As he leaned over to pull me the rest of the way up, I pushed in close. I was face to face with the scarecrow. The stench of rotting hay and death wafted off the burlap sack. I braced my arms against the hatch opening, leaned all my weight back on my heels, and pushed off with all my might. Larry's grasp slipped, and I fell butt first into the corn. Loose kernels took to the air as my body crashed below the grain. The vibrations of thousands of corn kernels rumbled as my body sank lower. 5 seconds to get stuck, 30 to be engulfed. Larry recovered from nearly tipping in and gripped the guide wire again. He tugged with all his might, but the weight of the corn held me in place. With every slight movement of my arms and legs, I became more trapped in the grain. The pressure grew, squeezing me like a corn cocoon. If I went too far in, I'd be crushed to death. The guide wire went slack and my body dropped another inch. I wasn't sure what was happening until Larry cannonballed right near me. Even under the crushing weight of the corn, I allowed myself a smile. He thought that he was landing on solid ground, but as soon as his straw feet found the kernels, he broke through the crust and fell into a void. The rumble was instant and loud. Millions of kernels broke free and fell toward the newly formed hole in the middle of the silo. The pressure that had nearly crushed me to death had disappeared in a blink. Larry was instantly engulfed. His thresher-tipped fingers disappeared below the corn. With the crust now collapsed, my newly born body emerged from the cocoon. I hung from the guideline over the gaping hole and allowed myself to smile. Larry was somewhere in the churning grain, hopefully crushed into a hail bay. I swung myself back onto the ladder and clambered out. I slammed the escape hatch shut and I latched it. The struggle had nearly torn the bulky ventilator off my face, so I finished the job and I threw it into the dark. I took in a deep breath of fresh air, my lungs purging the gas that I had ingested, and scrambled down the side of the silo as fast as my body could go. I was so concerned with getting down that I hadn't noticed Wes standing at the bottom of the stairs, cradling a hurt arm and urging me on. Is he dead? I think the only way to kill it is to burn it. Well, how are you going to do that if he's trapped? I grabbed Wes's hand and placed it on the side of the silo. Oh, this thing is just waiting for a spark. Golly, he said, taking a step back. You weren't the only one with wet kernels, I said. I'll be right back. I unhooked the harness and sprinted away from Silo 10 and back toward the office. Bursting through the door, I scrambled to Larry's desk and started ripping open drawers until I found what I was looking for. An old bottle of whiskey. Never had I been thankful for somebody being an alcoholic, but tonight had been a night of firsts already. Why stop with zombie scarecrows? By the time I got back with the bottle in my hand, Wes had done the math. I grabbed his propane tank, opened up the valve, and placed it at the base of the silo. Wes started up his truck and nervously drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, his foot hovering over the gas pedal. I moved to the passenger side of the truck, pulled out my lighter, and I lit the rag. It was go time. The kernels inside the silo were still shifting. Either the remains were still collapsing or Larry was trying to claw his way out. I let the fire on the rag grow. Once it had reached a critical point, I whispered a prayer and hurled it at the base of the silo. It smashed into the propane tank. I ducked into the truck and screamed to drive. Wes, hurt arm and all, didn't miss a beat. The man sent us into hyperspace and we tore ass down the gravel road, kicking up rocks as we blew past the busted entry gate. The propane container erupted. That bomb wasn't the end of the line. It was the catalyst that would ignite the bigger and dirty volatile gas inside Silo 10. The ribs of the silo flattened under the growing internal pressure. I guess those chemistry classes that I took at school weren't such a waste of time after all. We were a half-mile down the road when the silo boomed. A flash of white light illuminated the road in front of us for a fleeting second. The shock wave slammed into the truck, causing us to fishtail. Wes pulled over and we scrambled out. A huge fireball rocketed into the night sky, a Midwestern Nagasaki torching everything that it touched. How do you like that? Wes said, staring at the growing blaze. I don't, I said, but goddamn, what a beautiful sight. I'm not one to go around blaspheming, but goddamn seems like the only right word at the moment. I laughed. He was right. Goddamn indeed.